Right. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I think this is probably the busiest I've seen in the room since I was elected. We have a packed agenda tonight. There's an awful lot for us to go through, so I'm going to try and keep us to time as much as possible. I'll say it now to save it on the time. If you are here for a particular item of the agenda and then that item is dealt with, you are more than welcome to stay. But if you want to leave, I will fully understand it. Right, let us crack on. Item 1, to receive any apologies. Okay. Item 2, I can hear lots of beeping on.
Chair, in terms of apologies, Vishal is unable to be here and I'm his substitute.
Thank you. Is the room on mute? No. The next item is the minutes of the previous meeting held so long ago last week. I know from Pauline that we have a small correction to make. Pauline, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, the minutes shouldn't say that we approved the policy the policy for car parking to go to executive, because we don't approve anything here. It should say something like we noted it. So if we could change that, that would be good.
That's the bullet point, last bullet point on the top of the page. So where it says supported, we should say noted. Are you happy with that change? Everyone else happy with the change for that one word? With that being said, can I have a show of hands for the minutes of last week? Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll sign those in the course. Next item is declaration of interest. Does anyone have any interest to declare in any item on the agenda? Okay, usual rules apply. If you find you have an interest, please declare it as soon as possible. Next item is public question time. And then I know that we have one item under town and parish council question times. Actually, our first one of the new constitution, I believe. So welcome very much indeed. Would you like to read your question or take it as read? Read it.
I'll read it out. Thank you. My name is Sylvia MacDonald. I'm Chair of the Amenities Committee for Finch-Hampstead Parish Council. And thank you very much for the opportunity to put this question to you. Finch-Hampstead Parish Council understands the financial challenges which the council has to face. However, community hubs such as the Finch-Hampstead Baptist Church in Finch-Hampstead are not only great social centres, but provide a base for a lot of support services which save WBC money. The play area at the FBC is one of the best used in the whole of the borough. It is an integral part of the infrastructure at the centre, and its poor condition is costing WBC money in ongoing repairs. Finch-Hampstead Parish Council has already offered to commit over £200,000 towards replacing play equipment. Would the council, in its spirit of partnership with the parish council, offer at least some capital support for the refurbishment of the play area? Thank you.
Well, firstly, thank you for the question. As I say, it's the first question that we've had since we've put in the constitution for town and parish council question times at these meetings. Woking Borough Council is responsible for more than 100 play areas across the borough and provides vital opportunities for children and all of our residents to be active, social and imaginative. And it's fantastic that so many children and their carers have been able to enjoy the current play area at the FBC since it was installed. My own children have used it many times over the years. And that the contribution it makes to the wider community centre at this location. Many of our play areas across the borough do date from a similar area and are showing their age. Replacing broken equipment and bringing them up to modern accessibility and safety standards with equipment that is exciting for older children as well as for the younger ones is a significant challenge, particularly given the financial pressures we're facing. As you'll see from the agenda pack, the papers presented this evening set out the proposal for Woking Borough Council to fund 50% of the £400,000 required to improve the play area, with the remainder provided by the parish council. However, this is the scrutiny process and this is the budget setting process. So these are only draft proposals at this stage, with the capital programme still being under some degree of scrutiny as to afford its overall affordability. And that the final budget will require approval by full council in February. The committee will be well aware that the purpose of the first substantive paper this evening is to review and consider the whole place and growth revenue and capital proposals for 26 and 27, and that recognises the challenging financial environment and the need to be responsible and the need for responsible financial management. But I'd like to really thank you for the proactive engagement and support on this matter to date. Looking forward to having further conversations on how we can work together to bring these important improvements to fruition. And that's the answer. We'll get you a copy of that sent to you as well. Do you have a supplementary?
Just a brief supplementary question, if I Chair. I mean, this is one of the most popular play areas in the borough, and will become even better used or more used as a result of the developments at Arborfield, just around the corner, and equally linked to the California Country Park, of which we have other interests in relation to refurbishment and investment. I'd like to know what strategic plans the borough has for its development of play areas throughout the borough, so that we can see what we can do to assist and support in areas that perhaps need it most. We've just supported the development in Gorse Ride, which is the new housing development there. There is a small play area there. We're just about to refurbish a play area at the Memorial Park in Finch Hampstead Village. This one at the FBC Centre is a mega one and has so much use that we really do implore you to provide support for it. Thank you.
On some of that question, I don't have an answer immediately to hand, so we'll get you a full written response. Is there any of my colleagues around the room or officers that can want to say anything at this stage? If not, it will have to be a written answer, I'm afraid.
We will provide you with a more detailed written answer, but just to say, obviously, we do acknowledge that it's the need for that longer strategic outlook, and that is a key work item that is being planned over the course of the next year.
I just really wanted to say a big thank you for the help you've given at Gorse Ride. It's a flagship project delivering really high quality, much needed, affordable housing in the borough, and Finch Hampstead Parish Council's contribution is really welcome, and we would most definitely like to work with you at a strategic level to try and see what more we can do in partnership. Thank you.
Right. You are more than welcome to stay if you wish for the rest of the items. Are you sure? Never let it be said. Right. We shall move on. Do we have any councillor questions this evening? Excellent. Right. In which case, we'll move on to the first of the substantive items on the agenda, which is the medium-term financial plan. And tonight we are looking specifically at place and growth. And it's great to see George here with a cast of all of his senior leadership team and so many of the exec members, which reflects just how many areas of the council this budget actually crosses. George, can I hand over to you?
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, thank you to officers and members as well for this evening. Yeah, it's an interesting comment in terms of the number of staff and members. The place and growth budget, 55 million gross, 33 million net, 21 million pounds of income. The net cost at 33 million is about 18% of the council's overall budget, but that puts that into context. But you'll know indeed that there are key services that residents look to, whether that's travel, housing, play, indeed, as we heard from Finch said earlier, that are really important to them. I won't go through in huge detail. I think it's right that members have as much time as possible to ask questions of officers and members. I think that context in terms of how much we spend is important. The paper set out opportunities for further potential savings, That list isn't exhaustive by any means. We continue to look at for best practice. We look to other councils where we think we can learn from other places and take those on board. There is always a desire to be more efficient with the resources that we've got, more productive with the time that we have, and indeed working in partnership as much as possible. And again, Stephen's comment back to Finchhamstead there is a key part of how we knit things together successfully. There are indeed risks, though, and again, I won't go through the slide in detail, but I will highlight a few risks I think that are perhaps most challenging for us. And I'd pick up on housing and homelessness first of all. You may all know from other councils, particularly London boroughs, that housing costs and the cost of homelessness services is considerable and having a huge impact on services. With the success of the team, we are managing within our budget, but we must not be complacent on that. And we have further demands in that area, and we continue to work very closely with the team, work very well in terms of demand management in that area, and doing the very best we can for residents. Nevertheless, it remains a risk for us. You'll know that P&G, lots of the services are procured through contracts, and over the last few years, 18 months we've gone through various processes, the last of which members will be aware was our waste collection service, a very detailed, very engaged process where we used a process of dialogue with bidders. We had lots of interest from the market, and as a corporate team, P&G, working with officers from across the organisation, we've secured a fantastic contract that will come into force next June. Nevertheless, there are costs associated with that, and they are set out in the growth items before you. We've got further risks and challenges around contracts. Whilst we've just renewed our highways contract, that highways contract will expire in 2029. We need to be mindful of that. It's only 3.5 years away, and we need to be building towards that now. And indeed, our waste disposal contract, RE3, is 2031. Again, in the scheme of things, not very well, and we are beginning to develop those plans with our partners for a new contract from 2031. Broadly speaking, we spend towards £11 million a year on waste disposal. It's a huge contract for us, and getting that right going forward is hugely important. Later in the agenda, actually, you have a paper on parking enforcement contract, and again, another contract that we are keen to get the very, very best value from our contractors from. You'll see the savings set out, and indeed, as per previous years, they are challenging. Fee increases, difficult service changes, whether that's related to grass cutting or other services. And you'll see areas that we have touched on before, for example, litter bins and the reduction of litter bins. We know they are difficult and they're controversial. They are areas that we feel we need to look to make savings. Of course, the ask from me, and I'm sure members in the room will be, we have to make these savings. You saw the wider context of the council's budget with Graham, Susan, and indeed Stephen a few weeks back. If we're not making savings here, then we'll need to find those savings from elsewhere. And we still have a budget gap for 26-27, and we still have the risk of fairer funding that may make that budget gap even more significant from next year. So the challenge is really on us. And in previous years, we may have been able to find easier savings. Clearly, that's got more and more difficult each year, and we are doing the very best we can to find further savings. You'll see in there some really good progress on commercialisation as well. And Gemma is in the room. Gemma and the team have worked really tirelessly with officers in place and growth. Really grateful for that work. You'll see lines in terms of savings related to commercialisation, for example, at Dinton, for example, on sponsorship. And that's a really good way. So increasing our income from those means is a fantastic way to help ourselves balance our budgets. If I just turn very briefly to capital, you've got proposals related to capital. For place and growth, 26-27, the overall budget is £70 million. A big share of that is the new road being built at the moment, at South Wokingham Road. There are other investments related to highways, cycle and bus improvements, new housing provision as well, and indeed capital related from contributions from developers, including another paper you have on the agenda for this evening for Grays Farm as well. So the capital programme is funded indeed from those sources, Section 106 sources, and indeed some borrowing as well. Chair, I think if I stop there, hopefully I've set the scene, and then obviously happy to respond to detailed questions as members wish.
Right, before I go around the room for questions, if we can hold, if there's got questions on the detail, if we can focus on the questions on the opening few slides that George has just been through, then we'll go through each of the capitals and the revenue items. If there are items we get to as we go through the agenda that you're calling out the detail pages or anything, I think if you can just make sure that you're calling out clearly the bid reference number and the page number ideally, and then giving us all a few seconds to play catch up and get on the same page. So on the opening section that George has just been through, do we have any initial questions or thoughts? Peter.
It's an issue I've raised in the past, and it's the use of the word savings on page 17 of the agenda, whereas all the items underneath there, no normal person would just think these are savings. The saving is usually you spend X one year and you're going to spend Y the following year, and it's gone down. That's a saving. The vast majority of these, as I see, are revenue increases. So we should be honest about what we're doing here. They are revenue increases. People won't see them as savings, so perhaps can we be clear in terms of that communication?
I think it's a comment that you've made on other occasions as well, and others have done as well. George, do you have anything to
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, certainly it's how we presented them in years past. I understand it's how we've corporately presented them, and the same will be the feature of adults and children's savings when they come before you as well. I'm very happy to take that away in terms of future years and make that suggestion. I understand these are indeed savings, they are income as well, and they are additional fees. There's a mixture of issues. Ultimately, they bring a saving to the council, and that's why they're under that particular headline, but I can take that away to our finance team.
It's not a criticism of these this year or the previous year. I think it's a historic thing. People are trying to spin it a particular way. Perhaps we can just be straightforward.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, this represents an enormous amount of work, and we all want to be straight that we recognise that. In terms of the risks, I want to go back to what we discussed before, the last time that we did this, which is the issue of if you can't, that these have to be accepted, otherwise it's going to fall over, and that these cuts are almost non-negotiable. And I think in this one, we can see in R25, which is the A329 cleaning, and R28, which is the gullies maintenance, we can see the impact of cuts that end up costing more. And so I would like to state that is one of the risks that we should also be taking on board. That, we spoke in this meeting last year about if we only cleaned the A329 once a year, it would end up costing more to clean. And we had a long and animated discussion about the gullies, during which Pauline displayed her knowledge of apparently every single gully in her entire ward, which was extremely impressive. And sure enough, what we warned would happen did happen, and it ended up costing more. So when we look at R6, the grass cutting, and R9, the pathway vegetation, and R15, the waste bins, I would like to us all to remember that the risk is in these, and the risk should be considered very seriously given our learnings from last year, that the reactive work that will be needed to make up for these cuts may very well end up costing the council more than if we'd left it as it is.
Before I go to officers, I think what I would say is that, you know, this is the committee where we're actually looking at this, so this is the time to actually have those comments and give that feedback. Nothing in here, I think it's fairly safe to say it's not all done deals. That's the purpose of what we're looking at it from scrutiny, against the backdrop of not yet knowing what the final outcome of the fairer funding review is going to be, which will undoubtedly bring more pressures. I think what I'd also say, whilst I don't disagree, if we're wanting to look at items to take out, and you know, there's a huge amount of paperwork and a huge amount of work's gone into this. What I would say is if we're taking items out or wanting to have items looked at to take out, we should be also thinking over the coming weeks and at future meetings of items that could go in as a replacement. It's that balance of us looking at it from not just the perspective of all the work the officers and the executive have done, but I think our job here in alternatives as well. So I don't disagree, and I think we'll just have to sort of pull all that out. But what I wanted to stress is, you know, this is why scrutiny is looking at this in so much detail, to be that double check of what's being proposed, and if we don't think something is palatable or appropriate, to point it out and put it back in, or put
it's
something
not
else
a
in
question of
place.
being palatable, it's a question of it actually costing more money
Yeah.
than it did, and that,
poor choice
that
of word.
risk needs to be,
Yeah. George.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the R25 includes restoring budgets, in part because we've attempted to find savings, looked for those savings, and they've been unachievable for a number of reasons, whether that's moving traffic offences. There's others in that basket. You know, it's right that we're ambitious with savings, and we seek to achieve those savings, and we are realistic when we can't achieve those savings. I think the point you're making is the unintended or the consequences of making savings here that then pop up with costs later on. Certainly the intention of the officer team, my team, and working very closely with members, is not to create an issue in the future. And you'll see, you know, restoration, for example, and you picked up on it, the restoration of the drainage budget, I think is really important, because that it may be a very quick, easy saving to be made for this year, but the consequences will be paid in later years. So the intent is not to have those consequences, but very helpful to hear where your concerns are, where you think that might be the case, so we can kind of take those away and reflect on it. But you know, absolutely, this is the team working to look at a very sustainable long-term saving, and not just easy short-term measures that has a consequences for future years.
Catherine.
I haven't got a question on this section. It's later. I thought we were just on the, yeah.
Anything else on the introductory sections, or should we now move in? Oh, Pauline, apologies.
Thank you. I think what you were trying to say was maybe, you know, we told you so, and could you listen a bit more carefully next time? The things that I've noticed in this, and maybe I could ask you to take it away as a thought, is there's several pretty chunky manpower increases, cost increases in it, in terms of consultancy, and we pay quite a lot of officers already. How much duplication have we got here, and do we really need to bring external consultants in? And is that the most cost-effective way of doing it? I understand that you may only want them for a couple of months, and if it's IT, you may only want one specialism for a very short length of time. But there are, if you look at the actual overall savings in this budget, there aren't a huge amount. It's a couple 100,000. There's quite a lot of cost increases, and there's quite a lot of revenue increases, I think, Peter, just to be clear. And I just wonder if there's any way of rebalancing it so that we have slightly less manpower cost increases and slightly more service improvements, or slightly less service reductions. Not something that I want to discuss now, but just a thought whether the balance is right.
George.
As you say, not necessarily for discussion now, but certainly where there are some growth items where we are re-establishing budgets that should have been there in their budget realignments, but certainly where we've got corrections for other staff items, then you know, from a highways point of view, Chris and I would have talked in detail about what the alternatives are, how it could be provided cheaper, whether we need to do that particular piece of work, what the options are. We would have gone through that before putting that against a growth item very, very carefully. Some of the contract issues are related to what I said earlier. So, for example, special item where you've got highways and transport, contract development and procurement costs, that itself is building towards 2029. So we've got the very, very best contract that we can from 2029. So that upfront investment on specialist staff that I'm confident in saying will be an investment given the quality of that contract when it's secured in 2029. I'm saying that with confidence because we took a similar approach to waste, and I'm very confident about that new contract from next year.
Yeah, there was one I can't find now, which I found when I was reading through it and making notes on it, which looked like about £1 million worth of project management. Is that right? Have I imagined it? Imagined it.
I can't see. I mean, there is a waste collection and street cleansing contract, which is actually it's quite technical. It's a saving of 1.1, but that's because the budget. That's because it's the vehicles that we're not paying for in the first year. So that's a technical issue. But it's actually, you'll see it's in brackets. So that's actually a saving rather than than not. I say I think probably the most interesting one to highlight is the investment that we need to put in to get that highways contract from 2029 right. That totals 350, 450 in total over a 3-year period.
And it seems like 5 minutes since we did the last one.
Thanks, George. I think just to add to that, Pauline, on the terms of the highways transport contract, we renew these contracts every 10 years or so, where consultancies are in the market are doing this on a yearly basis. And obviously, so in terms of gaining the savings through that contract and putting us in the strongest position, we did some market engagement, we did some networking, and obviously it's really interesting how the market has changed hugely since COVID, and that was a long time since we renewed this contract. So having that specialist input is fundamental, as we found out in the waste contract, to be able to generate some of those savings and get the contract in the best position.
I found it, and I have misremembered it. It's 100,000. It was special item. Hasn't got a number. Can't find it. But again, it's the principle of the matter as to whether there's any double counting. It's 200,000 altogether, I think. PGR 39.
That's exactly that one. So it's the one that totals to 450 over the 3-year period, and it's there to support the delivery of the Highways 2029 programme.
It is, yeah, and just to kind of confirm that as well, it's not just one contract. We've got the NSL contract, we've got the WSP contract, we've got the Volker Highways contract, and there may be others in that mix between now and then. It's also looking at technologies around the savings, so some of that money we use to find the best the best kind of equipment and reporting software that is needed to kind of have in-house, so we're not reliant upon paying a contractor that year-on-year cost.
Okay, thank you.
Any more on the summary section at the start? George, do you want to go into any of the detail, or do you just want people
Just very happy to respond to questions that members may have on any of the lines, if that's helpful, Chair.
Could we structure it a bit? Otherwise, we'll be leaping around all over the place.
So I'm going to start off at the top, and we're going to go through it in order, because this is going to be a test of dexterity of flicking through papers. So if we start with the first bunch of sections, starting at number 1, and we're going to start going through each of the programme items. So I am falling into my own trap of not giving a page number. So we're going to start. We've gone through. You've got the summary list of all of the items in the entry documents, and if we deal with anything that comes up on. Where do we want to start? Anything that comes up from the savings on page 1, or savings 1 of 2, which is PGR 1 through to about PGR 12.
I'm looking at PG.R3, which is review of public car parks, additional car parking revenue opportunities. The Avery Corner car park, which is just by California Crossroads in my own ward, is currently free of charge for shoppers to use. And there are a number of shops around that crossroads, I'm sure you're aware. Co-op, there's a dentist, a fish and chip shop. All these businesses were very badly hit during the construction or redevelopment of the California Crossroads. They're still recovering. We would not welcome charges on that car park, which would, we believe, deter people from using those shops. They'll go elsewhere where there's no car parking. Just by Crowthorne Railway Station, you'll know you can get free parking there and use the facilities there. So strongly ask the officers to go away and put that on the back burner, put it to one side. Avery Corner car park is essential to those shops, their survival. They are well used, which we ask that they, for the relatively small amount of revenue you're going to get on that, we could please keep that free. Thank you.
Chris, I can see you reaching for the button. Do you want to respond, or one of the exec colleagues?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you, Peter. Obviously, you're probably aware we've had some conversations around that car park in relation to, at the moment, the car park's quite heavily used by the school. And that was one of the reasons we kind of went down this route and had that conversation with you, and then had a look at this one as an example. Appreciate, obviously, that it's used by the school, and that fills up the car park a lot. So by enabling a kind of a control of the car park and turn it over, we believe that obviously would have a positive benefit to the local facilities and the shops, which obviously want that turnover and custom to come and go. Obviously, yes, there's some aspects, if you've had a look at the bid, it kind of sets out kind of the school permits and the kind of the controls and bringing it in line with our other car parks that we can control. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's something that we're looking at, but we're quite supportive of the businesses. Obviously there is the school aspect that we do need to fully understand. But yeah, slightly confused because I thought you were supportive of it when we talked about it previously.
Mr. Chair, there are other ways of addressing this without charging people for using the car park, so perhaps time-limited use instead. So, but obviously you'll be consulting with members and parish council in the future, and the parish, I'm sure, you've missed the two, now they've gone, but they will have strong views about this as well, and they'll be helpful in terms of what they believe is palatable and will help the shops.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to kind of come back on that, you'll see there's also an item in here that talks around reviewing all of our car parks and the quality of them. And that's something that hasn't been done for a long time, and we've got maintenance that needs to be done. So by being able to charge in these car parks, so all of these car parks cost us money, maintenance and so on and so forth, but yet they don't generate any income to kind of cover the kind of the maintenance of them, the sweeping, cleansing, lining, whatever it may be. And that's one of the reasons why we need to look at this. We're reviewing all the car parks, understanding their condition, and then we can set out a full programme and understand the cost of the car parks to kind of ensure that they're all ultimately washing their face if they can, to prevent that kind of impact on our budgets.
I think residents believe that their council tax pays for their car parks rather than individual revenue on each car park. I will leave that hanging.
Did anyone else want to add to that, any of the exec colleagues?
Yeah, thank you.
No.
Can I?
Catherine, go ahead.
Well, I wasn't going to, but since Peter brought it up, I mean, Shenfield car park it's got more complex really, because we've now got Lidl. And I fear that what will just happen is that everyone will just go and park in the Lidl car park, which they're being very kind and not charging for and have no restrictions. And then they might become more restrictive. And I don't see anything here about a sort of 20-minute or half-hour free parking, which I thought would be appropriate for that car park. But we certainly welcome the lid on all-day parking, or indeed permanent parking in that car park. So that's pretty much it, really.
Pauline.
I was going to make part of the same comment about School Green car park, because I agree with you. The other thing just to bear in mind for School Green car park is that it's used quite often by people who are playing cricket or football or whatever in the recreation field. which doesn't have a car park of
Millworth
its own.
Lane.
Sorry?
Millworth Lane.
Which doesn't have a car park of its own. And if you put a 4-hour limit on it, I suspect you might cause a problem to some of the cricket competitions that go on. So I think you just need to find a way of avoiding having Millworth Lane and the surrounding neighbourhood covered in cars when there's nowhere for them to park at all and there's no pavements and it's really tight. Because you put a 4-hour limit on a car park that people actually do use for more than 4 hours. I've used it playing cricket for more than 4 hours. Charity match, you understand, not a professional cricketer.
Any other comments on this one?
No, not on the parking, on the 1 to 12.
Okay, but on the parking one specifically. So I think, general, I'm going to try and capture some of these as we go through, rather than trying to sum them up.
You just confirm that parking revenue is ring-fenced and only can be spent on parking-related services. That's what I thought, but maybe not.
On street, yes. Off street, no.
Thank you.
So the comments I'm picking up on that have been made are really looking at how this will be implemented. Does it have to be implemented? How would we implement it in different places? So I think Avery Corner in particular, the charging in particular is the one that's come up. At School Green, it's the displacement to other areas, Arborfield, the impact of the little car park and what happens if that starts charging. What else have I missed, Paul?
One I didn't mention. Could somebody remind me where Shoot End East is? Which one is it?
It's the far.
Right, okay, so I've come in quite often to licensing and appeals, and I've never ever managed to park there. It's always completely full. So I'm not quite sure how your public's going to use it because I don't think anybody will. On the other hand, the one behind here has got loads of spaces, but nobody can use it.
Separate to this, we're looking at, if you may recall, the car park used to have 3 hours no return within 2. And then obviously COVID hit and things changed and the car park moved to the way it is now. We're looking to reintroduce that. That doesn't need to be part of this detail, but that's part of a process which enables that car park to have turnover. It enables staff that kind of current go on a frequent basis to be able to get in and out rather than having to walk to a carnival pool and spend, which is an efficient use of time. And it also then enables visitors, registrar, so on and so forth, to kind of use it much easier.
What you might also look at is this park behind here. That, as far as I can recall, is never completely full, whilst that one is around. So there might be some jiggery-pokery between the allocations to mean that you can get more staff in who do need to go in.
Perfect, thanks.
Right, next. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Just one question. If we are adding additional parking fees in a number of places, have we considered maybe a reduced charge or no charge for electric cars? We talk about our net zero targets. Is it something that we want to incentivise in terms of people's use of greener modes of transport?
Correct, councils across the country are increasingly going down the route of charging differentially for different levels of pollution and so on. And I think it's something we should look at. I've discussed it with the team. We will look at it. It's not going to be within this year's budget, but it's certainly something we could consider for the future.
I do drive an electric car.
And I don't.
Right, sorry, we've jumped around on the list of questions. If I've left anybody off the list so far, I've got Mary-Louise next, I think.
Yeah. That's lovely. Sorry. Yes, we haven't quite finished with parking because with in the issue of, I don't think we'll ever be, but with Ashenbury Park and the proposal to charge sort of, let's be honest, like country park prices for something which does not yet meet the expectations of what a country park would actually be. I mean, to invest in the paths is great, but I think while I'm contractually obliged never to say anything less than positive about Woodley, the car park is a bit of a moonscape, to be honest. It's not something that you know, I think you can charge. I know there's a maintenance plan, but I'm not sure that it's something that you can charge. And, you know, the prices that we're talking about for Dinton, for example, which is a different matter in terms of experience and whatever. So, again, I think what's coming is that rather than having a sort of like blanket approach, each one of these needs to be looked at kind of individually. To know more about the use of the car park and how, you know, how best it can be used. In terms of that, also, I had a question about the Ringo. You know, no one could hate Ringo more than me, I think, although I think other people do, in terms of, you know.
Should we say that other companies are available, just in case it's, you know, to anonymise your hatred of one particular vendor?
Other companies are available. Well, we will, I mean, you know, the triumph of the tech bros and so on. But I wanted to ask because it looks to me as if you are proposing, you know, the 150, in order to save the 150 grand, you're going to, in terms of upgrading the machine, you're going to get out of the contract earlier. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on, I understood that the National Parking Platform was going to provide a sort of a universal base from which people could, I mean, we know that the apps have disincentivized or stopped people who are not confident in using smartphones from going out, from using car parks and so on. And one of the promises of the NPP was that it was going to offer sort of like a card reading, whatever basis that would be national and would also be sort of more in-house. So I just wanted to know, is that still within your thinking, or has that been moved away?
I'll go to George. I mean, I know a fair amount about some of that platform because you'll never guess who's one of the driving forces behind the deployment of that national parking white box solution and how it's allowed multi-vendor solutions. And places like BCP use one platform but 3 different vendors depending on where you are. I've also got a few concerns about how this one would work in the costs and whether there are additional savings that can be made by evaluating how we look at this. I don't necessarily agree with the principle that it's disincentivizing people from going out through an app. I think, having seen data elsewhere from a couple of years ago, I don't know if I agree. But George, do you want to, or your officers?
Well, it was, I think, just could we deal with the Ashenbury question first of all, and Andy can help with that, and then I'm hoping Matt can help with the car parking app issue. Matt or Chris, anyway, one or the other. But if Andy could start on the Ashenbury Park. That's...
Yeah, sorry, I think the question was that it doesn't seem to be fully a country park and we're going to charge country park level charges. I think this is what I would call the first stage of turning it into a country park, and the charges are in there in order to secure the investment to actually upgrade the footpaths. I think there will be hopefully further investments in the future in the site as we develop it further. But, you know, we're in a difficult financial position at the moment, and there aren't options to simply go out and borrow money and do this investment without generating the income to cover it.
Yeah, I was just, what was the bid number? I just couldn't
Sorry?
find, what was the bid number to the?
PG4. R4.
R4. Yes.
Page.
29.
Just because I'm determined to try and keep us on track. Have we finished on R3? Right, R4.
Yeah,
Chris.
I do have a feeling there's some confusion there. We're not looking to get rid of Ringo. There's a link obviously to Ringo currently with the current providers that we use. And I think, so Matt looks poised to come in, so if you've got more of the details, so if you want to kind of jump in, but yeah, we'll clarify it for you.
Sorry, it said from current provider to alternative provider. Sorry.
So I'll try and help. The current provider, the machines are coming end of life, and we need to look at different providers. There are options. About 7 or 8 years now. They're getting close to needing to be replaced. We do know there's other providers that can provide equipment that's much cheaper to run, much lower cost, so we can make some savings in changing the provider. But by changing the provider, you may have to change other aspects of the package. Ringo might be one of them. So this provider we've been looking at has its own bespoke system, which adds an extra layer of complexity to people using electronic devices to pay. But it would potentially mean that Ringo would no longer be in Woking Borough. But these options haven't been considered yet. We haven't made that decision. It's an option that we're looking at doing. There are other pros and cons in relation to changing provider. But what we do know is that we can get savings by having a different provider to the current one.
And would those savings be not free? Nothing is risk-free, but I mean, is there not the risk that they would, that they would be more expensive down the line? Because one of the things that we know about, engaging in new apps is that initial costs, they keep initial costs low, and then they start to
so it's
as
not,
Ringo has.
It's not specific about the app itself, it's about the machine physically, and how much it costs to run the machines, how much it costs to change the ticket machine computer system. So when you change tariffs, it's much cheaper using different providers than the one we currently got, etc. So there's cost savings there, but as I say, the consequences of changing the provider is the partnership with other systems, i.e. Ringo, that might be impacted. And a national parking platform is something that we definitely signed up to be part of the conversation. We're still unclear exactly what it means to us. We understand that there is potentially more cost to the user by going down the MPP route, but we are keeping a watching brief. I understand it's actually a single platform that's still on your phone, but it doesn't matter which provider you're using, you can just use this single source.
That's what they promised.
Yeah.
Pauline.
So I remember being told we had to replace the machines. I didn't realise that long ago, because they were end of life and because we were having trouble with people nicking all the cash out of them, and et cetera, et cetera. I think what we actually ended up with was pretty good in that you've got the check-in, check-out, which a lot of people use. You've got the option of using cash if you want to, and you can also use Ringo and you don't get charged for it, which I think is unusual for Ringo usage, or at least there's a lot of places you do get charged. Mainly some of these sneaky fees that they charge you for reminders that you have to switch off. My worry is I remember the project to put the new ones in last time, which must have taken the best part of a year. The charging was a nightmare. Well, Andy remembers all about it. We spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to get it sorted, and I just worry that it's a huge amount of distraction and it'll cause a huge amount of uproar, and because if it's like the last cut over, it didn't work properly for a long time, and payments weren't working properly, and fees weren't working properly, and the notices on them were wrong, and it was just a complete and utter nightmare for months. So my message to you is just be careful what you wish for. It better be really worthwhile.
So I think
So
go ahead.
Just to add, the current provider, the machines are costing us more and more every year because they're breaking down more often. New provider that we were looking at as a potential is starting to be used in many of the other local authorities in the area, and the current provider, Flowbird, are starting to phase out. So there is an improvement there. And the new providers, they charge less for transaction costs. They charge less for banking charges, collecting cash, etc. So it does work out better.
Yeah, I mean, my memory was it wasn't the machines that were the problem. It was the integration, the software, the charging, the bank integration, and things like that, which were awkward.
I'm going to try and keep us on. Caroline.
Mine's just a quick question on R9 and cutting rights away, the vegetation.
Hang on.
Sorry.
Have we finished on RG4 before we start jumping down the page?
I'm getting keen.
I know, it's good, moving us forward. I think the only point I was going to make, and the national parking platform, I've seen some of the early work that was done in BCP, because that was the first test case of the white box solution, which enabled the 3 different vendors across BCP to coexist on one backbone. That was also done as part of a process because they wanted they had to harmonise contracts across the three, so you might want to go and chat to BCP. The backbone, that national white box, I think will make it a lot easier. My massive concern is if we're going to do anything that brings in yet another app at the same time when everyone is trying to move away from all of the apps. So I think if we're trying to drive adoption and make life easier for people to use our car parks and park, I think I just have a lot of concerns. I get that we have to make some of the savings, some of the investments in some of these areas, but I think there's more work is needed on how we do this, and I'm not particularly wedded to any particular parking vendor. I guess the informal interest is I used to work for Ringo, so I know an awful lot about the technology and the platform, but I'm not wedded to any vendor. But I do have concerns about moving away to have something that is yet another app that might be required. Proliferation of apps, especially in parking, is something that backbone is trying to move away from and make it easier and make it cheaper. I think there's things like the convenience fees, you know, and there's all of those other things. I'd also like to think when we're looking at this in general about how many machines we have, how many we need to have. Do we need as many? Do we need to replace everything that we've got? Other boroughs and other places are looking at, you know, increasingly ripping out machines as increase of apps. So I think there's more data that we can look at. So I think my general observation when it comes to on-street parking and off-street parking, and I'm not a fan of the stop-start method because I've been caught out forgetting to do it despite all the geolocation and geofencing around the app that's meant to tell you that you've left the car park. I think there's more work that we need to do to look at on-street parking technology and off-street parking technology. Sorry, that makes me sound like a geek. But it is a really important area that impacts so many people across the borough. Unless anybody wants to come back, we shall keep moving through. I think there's more work. I think we can probably do more and go faster and look at different things. And I think it's a thorny issue.
I think you're absolutely right, and it is a trade-off as well, isn't it? So you go for a different provider. There are things that you don't get anymore. There are things you get that are better. At the end of the day, it's a trade-off. The proposal in there is that the income or the savings will be generated in year 2 rather than year 1. So it gives us a year's float to be able to discuss those changes and decide what's the best approach.
And I think being particularly geeky, I think as we're doing anything, I think we need to, if we're doing redesign of signage or redesign of machines or anything else, I think we need to find ways of making it abundantly clear that we don't use QR codes. I think just where you're seeing people using rogue QR codes, not necessarily in this borough, but in other places, you see it used more and more of people using rogue QR codes to redirect people to do. So I think we just need to redesign signs as well. Okay. 4 we've done. Should we keep moving through? Number 5, call out if you have any questions. We're going to go to R6. Mary Louise.
I was just going to make the general question of why is it red, or can you elaborate on why it's red as opposed to amber?
Sorry, what?
Grass cutting. The grass cutting one. R6.
Sorry, are we on R6?
Yeah. It's red, and I just thought it needed a bit of amplification.
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a good question. So the red, amber, green relates to the certainty in terms of the figures and the finances and the project delivery. So currently we are working with a contractor regarding the £250,000, and therefore we've selected red because it's got low certainty at the moment, but in recent days the contractors come through and said they're coming to high confidence in terms of delivery of that 250,000 in reduction of those 2 cuts. So that was before it was published. Does that answer your question okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Mary Louise first, then Pauline.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to reiterate that this is one of the ones that I think we need to be really clear about the threat from, because this will have, you know, we all, as councillors, receive a lot of emails anticipating the grass cutting, complaining about the delay in the grass cutting, criticising the grass cutting that has taken place. And you know, it's something that people feel very strongly about, quite rightly. And I think there's an enormous risk that we will have to essentially back down on this one, because the impact on, as you say, the visual appearance of the borough, the issues that we had last year about ticks with dogs, injuries, and so on and so forth, that this one, I think, has a very high reversibility risk, if you like, that we will have to back down from it because of the level of public anger, yeah, and disappointment with this, you know, a very visual service that people kind of expect. You know, one of the things that I'm sure we all hear at the door is that I pay my council tax, why don't they cut the grass? So this one, and the vegetation as well of the paths, these will have to go into I think these will have to go into remedial work, which will end up being more expensive.
Pauline.
I agree with Mary Louise again. This one is, I think, a cut too far, if you excuse the pun, or maybe not cut enough. But the reason we didn't get many complaints last year in comparison to previous years is because we didn't have very much rain. The minute it rains, you end up with feet of grass. If you're only cutting it twice a year, you're going to end up in all sorts of trouble. It's a shame we can't have something that's slightly more flexible that allows you to cut more when it grows and cut less when it doesn't. I don't know if there's any flexibility amongst our suppliers of manual labour that might mean that they could, I don't know, fix potholes when it's not raining and cut grass when it is, or something like that, because you can't fix potholes in the rain and you can't cut grass when it's not growing. I don't know, but there seems to me an obvious or potential delta between grass cutting, road maintenance, and gritting, because you don't cut grass in the winter either because it doesn't grow well, or it's covered in snow or whatever. But so there needs to be more flexibility in this to cope with actual reality, which is that grass is not reliably predictable, and that some of the other things aren't either, and they all almost have a delta with each other. So I just wonder if we could think again about this one, but also think about what potential cooperation we could have between different manual areas, manual services the council have, to try and make it more flexible.
Any comments from around the room?
Yeah, thanks, Pauline. Yeah, I think it's obvious that nobody wants to be in this position in terms of, you know, reduction of services and for the grass especially. We are aware, and I'll just come back to that in a second, but just focusing on your point, Mary Louise, in terms of the A33 and the A329M, just to reassure you that the street cleansing contractor will be cleaning those two main roads on certain frequencies throughout the year. So that's that is already in the contract on that one. But Pauline noted your comments on that, and we'll get back to you.
I think I was just going to add in agreeing with both Pauline and Mary Louise on it. I think there are some areas. This is one of those ones where it's probably a lot of my casework in the summer months is visibility displays, and I think there's one particular junction that many of you know in my ward that straddles the border of Bracknell and Wokingham, that literally the verge is split between two different councils. So I think there's some tidying up work that we can do. I think the view I'm getting from the rest of colleagues is this is one that we think needs to be looked at again, or more work needs to be done on some of those areas. Obviously, if we take any savings out of this pot, we'll have to find somewhere else. But I think there's the feeling from the committee is that there's more work that needs to be done to look at this and its impact cumulatively. George.
Yeah, I mean, just to reassure, we'll take that away and give it some thought, but just to reassure, in terms of highway visibility displays, that wouldn't be impacted by this proposal, nor would areas where you've got a more managed approach. So play pitches, you know, for example, that's a different approach that we would take to this. But there would be no, we would be very careful to avoid any health and safety implications arising from this particular saving.
I think just before we move on, the only other comment I wanted to make is that this has only got the year 1 impact in it, and the year 2 and year 3 columns are blank. So if there's a future change or future impact that might come down the line in future years, I think it just be, we need to think about what that might look like or what the impact might be.
Sorry, so the saving is in year 1, and then that saving would be repeated in year. So it wouldn't be more savings at this stage, but that saving that's been achieved would be then maintained throughout years 2 and 3.
My point, sorry, is that this is a saving in year 1 that if it needs to be reversed again, there's that impact as well. So if it becomes, to Mary Louise and Pauline's point, something we then have to reverse, then obviously that's going to have a knock-on impact in year 2 and year 3 because we'll see that figure restored. So, okay, anything else on this item? No, we'll go to our 7, garden waste fees by 10%. Before I go to Pauline, one of the things I think I made last year when we were going through the whole process of the waste collection was whether we would be able to redesign this service, whether we need a service that runs 52 weeks of the year and has as many collections as we do, whether the new contract allows us to have a different cost, different base, different flexibility, collections over 9 months, collections over whatever. Just, I don't see any sign in this that we're looking at service redesign for garden waste collections. I just wonder if that had been picked up for future years' work as part of the onboarding of the new contractor. You can come back on it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, that's fine. I'll let Pam go first and follow up. Thanks, Pam.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add that you're absolutely right, Chair. We did raise that in the competitive dialogue process with the bidders, and each one of them individually said the same thing, which was after calculations, there was actually no overall financial benefit to reducing that period down. So actually, that was the reason why we left it the same as it is. So absolutely right question, and we followed that through that process.
Thank you. Pauline.
It was just a quick question about this one. My recollection again with this one, which might be wrong, is that the fee has to be cost recovery. So you have to be able to justify the fee as equivalent to the cost of providing the service. Is that right?
Pam, was that a hand to answer the question?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear if anyone was answering it there, but just to say that is absolutely correct, Pauline, yes.
In which case, it's interesting. So is this, because it's quite a big increase, have we been making a loss on it last year, for example, and should we have increased it more last year?
I'm sure Richard will have some specific detail, but for me, we don't regard it as a loss, but the cost of the processing continues to increase because that contract goes up by inflation. So, and the inflation on that contract would be higher than the rate that we would normally be applying ourselves. So there's a number of other factors to consider in that as well. So we do need to keep pace with the additional costs which we're incurring.
So you're telling me the cost has increased at 10% in 1 year?
Not the cost of disposal, but all of the costs separately. So if you look at the whole service in its entirety and the different parts of it, there will be an amount amounting to 10%, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was talking about the whole service. The provision of green waste collection service has increased in cost by 10% in 1 year.
And if you add all the disposal and collection, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else on this? No. R8. Country park parking charges. Mary Louise, is that a question?
No, just you know, resigned, acceptable. It is.
Peter.
I assume this includes California Country Park. So one of the aims of the council is to encourage people to use green space, get exercise for, you know, health, mental health, well-being, take children places. Year on year, we are increasing the cost of doing that and putting people off. California Country Park recently had a big event. They ran out of parking space and they all parked down 9 Mile Ride, both sides, caused chaos. Buses couldn't pass, emergency vehicles couldn't get by. If we keep increasing car parking charges in California Country Park, that's going to be a regular occurrence. So I think we need to think these things through. I know Cantley has had a stay of execution. Could we encourage people to use country parks by not constantly increasing the cost of parking there?
George? Stephen?
I just really wanted, obviously we're going through line by line, so I imagine there's going to be objections to everything that's being proposed. But one thing that I think the Chair alluded to at the beginning, it's a lot easier to say what you want to take out than actually suggest what you would put in, without wanting to preempt later discussion. We haven't seen much in the way of suggestions of what we put in yet. It's mainly been about what we take out.
And on the country park specifically, Peter, just to come out, I think we do need to be very clear that use of green space and country parks is not equal to, it's correlated with, but it's not equal to car parking. Perhaps Andy can speak to some of the benchmarking or the usage rates we see in the country parks. Obviously, it has been an increase, but, you know, I think we have a number of, well, many fantastic green spaces in the borough, spread around the borough. Our country parks are wonderful destinations, and I think we rightly want people to be able to enjoy them. But we also need to look at how to, quite frankly, find these income generation to keep the financial stability of the country park. So, I mean, it's great that we do see great popularity in many visits to the country parks regardless. I will note one of the proposals here is a move away from linear charging, so that we're looking at the overall sort of trip cost when people do come to these real destinations, and actually reducing the cost in the hour 3 and 4 rates. So if people are coming for a longer time, you know, they're spending more time, they might be visiting events and so on, but perhaps for those shorter visits, they're doing that a little more locally, where hopefully they can walk and cycle.
I shall keep moving through. Oh, sorry, Stephen.
Just a little additional point, just picking up on what Catherine said about green spaces where people can have the opportunity to enjoy recreation and do exercise, which you're absolutely right, Peter, is an important council priority. The new local plan, which is currently at examination, identifies over 100 green spaces which are in or adjacent to settlements where we hope people will be able to do exactly what you've been recommending.
Dave.
I noted that obviously Dinton Pastures is one of the ones where the parking increases will happen. We're also looking to get more revenue from Dinton Pastures in terms of a membership scheme potentially and other things that were listed there. Those two seem to be not necessarily coalesce together. If you increase the charges, your parking charges to an area, you're likely to reduce footfall, not increase it. If you're trying to make it a more get revenue through other sources, you want to increase usage, not decrease it. So there might be a non-complementary element there.
Shall I come back on that? I mean, so I've been in the council a long time managing country park car parks, and we've had the same discussion every time we've put up car parking charges. And I've had people say to me, people won't come, they're going up too high. And the reality is that the ticket sales go up every year. And I haven't seen a reduction in ticket sales in any year I've been working for the council. So each year we put them up, we seem to have a fantastic product here. And that's down to all of us. We've developed something that's absolutely fantastic offer, which is really, really popular with the public, and they are prepared to pay.
So are you saying we should dramatically increase it more?
I think that's what the bid says, doesn't it?
Dave, are you proposing a huge increase?
No, I'll wait for the proposal to come. I'll wait for the proposal to come through and then make my views known.
Right, I'm going to keep us moving through. Car parking charges, we have done that item. R9, no, have I skipped one? No, I haven't skipped one. Done R8, R9. Caroline, then Mary-Louise.
Sorry, I think we might be going to the same one. This is also one that will, I think, end up costing us more, not just reversing, but actually the remedial work that will be involved, because what will happen is that it will be turned into a health and safety issue, that people will say these paths are impassable, we can't cross them, I can't push my pram through, I can't get a wheelchair through. And so individually they will have to be remediated, and that will end up costing more. So again, I would just flag from our experience, like in Norries, of, responses to leaf clearing, for example, it ends up being what will happen, or there is a strong risk that should be considered that will happen, is that, individual pathways will have to be remediated because it's a health and safety, or they will be presented as a health and safety issue, and then they will have to be remediated individually, and that will end up costing us more.
I think we put that into the feedback, and then you can respond.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make those notes and put that back into. So, but the point is heard. Absolutely.
Catherine.
Well, I was just going to say something positive, which is, isn't this somewhere where we could try and get community involvement and, partnerships in a sort of small community way? Because I know lots of people who go out with secateurs and cut things along pathways.
Yes, I think. It's a short answer.
I'm just responding to Peter's suggestion about handing out sides. No. But yeah, okay. R10, which is Ashtonbury Park into a new country park, which I think links back to one of the earlier comments as well. Any comments on that? We've talked about that one. R11, Pauline?
Boy, was I pleased to see this. That is very good news. Does it cover all the costs, please? Because they make a packet out of Henley Royal Regatta. We shouldn't be subsidising it.
I think this is the first, perhaps, of other discussions that we will have in terms of cost recovery and have a mature conversation about that. We don't want to thwart the fantastic kind of event, but equally, I think there's a fairness in terms of the costs that are a burden to this council. But we need to do that in a collaborative and constructive way.
And can I just say, I welcome your support on this, Pauline. I do recall your predecessor as leader of your group taking a somewhat different view when I first suggested that we might want to look at this.
Including when I was exec member for highways, and I was suggesting that we should be doing exactly this.
I'd agree. I think we should be not taking on the cost when Henley are making a fair chunk of cash from the regatta, and it's not necessarily perhaps fair that residents support or subsidise their work. R12. Catherine.
Yes, sorry, I was going to sort of complain about this bit. Only this week we thought of using this service, and we looked at the cost, and it's £69. We've only got one item. So I was going to suggest, why don't we reduce the cost to the customer and allow collection of one item? And who on earth is going to find 3 small electrical items that they can't just put in their car and take to RE3?
Pauline.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with this. The thing that alarmed me a bit was the services are currently oversubscribed, and this needs to be addressed. Whilst we know what happens when people stop using services like this, they start putting stuff in ditches and down tracks and things. So I would prefer people to use more of this and us to actually make even a small amount of money out of it, rather than us trying to manage demand down by increasing prices.
Yes, sorry, I was going to say about it's going to fly tipping.
Yeah, thanks for picking that up. I think it's just about the wording, because the intention was not to reduce the service, and certainly not to hinder any residents in terms of getting the service. That's the first thing. All that is saying, look, there's not enough bookings, there's not enough slots, and we need to increase that slots. So therefore, we're going to increase the available slots by 10%, if that makes sense. So it's the wording that's not quite right and not flowing. So that's what we're doing to address it, get more slots in, and then get more productivity.
Can I suggest that we tidy up for the final documents that, as this rolls through the process? Mary-Louise, sorry. You should see the long list of names being added and crossed out. R13. So pre-sorted black waste in household waste recycling centres. I was going to say, I'm seeing this increasingly more and more, and I think it reflects, the scale of the challenges that we are facing. Does anyone have any comments on this? This one seems actually quite logical to me.
Yes, it does. But does it include adopt-a-street bags?
The red bag.
The green adopt-a-street bags. But
Sorry, I'll.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a good point. So what we're going to do is work with new contractor Biffa next year, because we want to maximise the amount of recycling from litter. So we're going to put in, or proposal to put in, which will be highlighted next year in terms of having different coloured bags for different things. So, green for refuse or recycling or what have you. And we'll put that in for next year, and Biffa's fully supportive of that, just trying to get as much recycling out of the litter as possible.
Sorry, the different colour bags for those community groups that are going up and down picking up on
That's
purges.
correct. Yeah, that's correct. So,
which I see elsewhere. Other councils do that.
Yeah, other councils do it. In our councils, it's green recycling bags. So we supply the bags, the litter pickers, the high-vis vest. They carry out some really, really good work in the local community. We're indebted to them. And as I say, next year we're going to work in terms of getting recycling split out from the litter, so we can maximise that.
Great. Pauline?
I didn't understand this. As I read it, which may not be what it was talking about, it's people rocking up at the recycling centre with a black bag full of stuff, some of which is recycled, or some of which is recyclable, and chucking it all in the general domestic waste pen. Is that what it is? How on earth are you going to deal with that? How do you know they're our residents? And how on earth are you going to deal with it on the site? Is somebody going to sit there with a knife and slit open your black bag before you chuck it over the fence?
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Pauline, on that one. So this is part of the wider RE3 strategy with ourselves, Reading and Bracknell. So no matter who goes on site, where they're from, we want more recycling out of it. So therefore, there will be the challenge in place for residents to be challenged for and just check in terms of the amount of recycling in their black bags, but also that before they go to the tip, and the HWRC to separate their recycling out as much as possible.
I was there today, and it strikes me they're already doing this. They're pretty good at stopping people putting the wrong stuff in the wrong place and telling them to go to the right place, and I actually think they're really good, they're really helpful. I think they're already doing it, but maybe I'm wrong.
I was going to say I have been, yeah, when they're looking into great big bags of rubbish, and it's not necessarily black bags, but it's any big boxes or stuff, they're looking into it and randomly going, you need to put that over there and that over there. So I think this is actually already informally being done. So if this is the cost of making a bigger noise about it, I think it's great, but I think this is already being done informally across, certainly a long shot.
Yeah, and I go to the one in Reading, it's the same.
Pam. So was it Pam? Yes, Pam.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to add, if I could, you're absolutely, again, correct that there's some random stuff that's going on at the moment, and certainly direction is being provided into the right bays and the right waste going in the right bays. This is kind of escalating it to another level where, as Pauline rightly said, you know, someone comes along with a black bag and is asked to, you know, show what is in that black bag, and then if it has recycling in it, that person will have an area set aside and they will be asked to separate it or take it away and bring it back, but preferably separate it before it then goes into the appropriate place. So this is another level of request, which is really just recognising the significant difference in the cost to us of being able to recycle something versus having to pay for it to go to residual waste.
Dave.
I think we've got to be careful with this, that it doesn't also encourage fly tipping, because if somebody doesn't want to do that, they could just drop it in
the ditch on the way out.
Yes.
Okay.
I think personally, given that we think they're already doing this, I'd be a bit reluctant to give them an extra 10 grand to do it, which is, I think, what this says.
The line says so this is a saving that could be achieved through more diversion of what currently is going to energy for waste and would go to recycling. So there's a saving to the council for waste essentially going in the right place.
So that's a reduction in expenditure, is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it wouldn't take that many people fly tipping in addition to more than offset that and make it a cost.
Point made. Let's look at the next item, which I've just lost where I am. 14. RG 14. Okay. RG Pauline?
I don't know if it's connected to this, but roundabout sponsorship. We've got a particularly unpleasant roundabout at the end of Meldreth Way that could do with something doing to it and has not had anything done to it despite many, many requests over many, many years, probably because it doesn't have any soil. Sorry? Well, yeah, maybe we should have something else on it, but anyway. I'm just wondering how realistic more sponsorship will be, how we're going to go about it. Because I think we've already got roundabout sponsorship, but I'm not sure it actually works terribly well.
Any comments, or just note and pick up?
No, I was going to, it's a great tenuous link to our commercialisation, which is going to come up more and more as this meeting develops. Gemma, would you like to just quickly join us and start telling us about commercialisation, please?
Thanks, Mark. So with roundabout sponsorship in particular, we've completely redesigned the process. I think you'll see online there's now maps of where our roundabouts are. We've been able to go out and identify more roundabouts to be sponsored. We've increased the number of inquiries and we've looked at our costs, so there's full cost recovery there as well. So we have identified greater opportunity, but I'll look at if you've made a note of the roundabout, we'll look at that one.
Just refer everybody to the complete and utter mess there was last time with heaps of smelling bags of dog detritus beside bins that weren't being emptied or had been taken away or where they used to be. Please don't do that again.
Just to reassure you, the savings come in from the second year of the 3-year programme. That gives us a year to think this through very carefully, work with parish and town councils, use the new BIFA service to understand where bins are full and not, and have a real kind of data-led approach to this. I think the fact is we do provide more litter bins than many other similar councils, and there are some savings to be made, but they need to be made very carefully and in consultation.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's good reason for this being read. We had a task and finish group on scrutiny last year, which went through an enormous amount of discussion on litter bins, and I don't think actually delivered anything at all of any use to you. So I think this is going to be a very difficult one to deliver.
But I think also it's reflecting the fact it's year 2 rather than year 1. Yeah, so it does give us. I agree.
Can I just
Catherine,
one thing, which I observed that shops are a great generator of litter. They have their own bins out. They have a bin outside, one of our bins outside, gets absolutely full. But they also have their own skip for their own rubbish. Is there not some arrangement we could come to with the shops whereby they empty all that rubbish which they're generating into their own skip as opposed to us collecting it? It was just a thought. I don't know whether it can go anywhere.
certainly one to officers to have a look at as we go through the process. R16. Mary-Louise.
Yes, sorry, not to repeat the same, but this has a great deal of, or it looks like it could have a lot of risk attached to it. And I was wondering, sort of, as I said, with residents in my ward, we've had excellent response from ASB and the sort of like the increased sense of security and whatever that it has contributed to. And I worry that this would lead to a sort of, because it, you know, the responsiveness of the team has always been mentioned by people. You know, they say, people who say, oh, no one's going to help me, no one's going to talk to me. And then they say, oh, well, you know, they email back right away, or they, you know, I phoned. And so it has an enormous, I just want to flag the enormous impact that sort of like the responsiveness has. And the risk of things sort of disappearing, or you know, people who might report something or might be able to report something in out of hours might not be able to report while they're at work or on shift or whatever. So I think there are real risks to the value of the service from this. And I wonder, you know, have you sort of like analysed how many of the 489 that were out of hours, how many of those would not have been reported, or, you know, if there hadn't been the opportunity to report them out of hours? I don't know if you did that analysis.
Thank you. That analysis has been undertaken in order to come up with these figures. What we've also done is had a look at the type of reports that have been received in the out-of-hours service, and we can say the majority of those are types of reports that wouldn't actually be dealt with until the next working day. So that often is if something is reported on a Friday, for example, or early hours of a Saturday morning, the actual response SLA, so that the contracted response wouldn't actually take place until the Monday morning. So in terms of people reporting, the response wouldn't be affected. What we would also do is, where there are those cases that you've just described there, for example, in particular wards where individuals would like to speak about their cases, flexible hours would still be available for contact for residents and members of the public in those examples. So it wouldn't be that no response would be received outside of the 9 to 5 service. If people did make a request, for example, that actually due to working due to working hours they would like to be contacted outside of the 9 to 5, then the team would still be able to do that. And in addition to that, we would still have the availability, of course, of ad hoc requests as well. So in hotspot periods or summer periods where service request times would change, teams would have available to them flexible working hours, which the council operates in any case for the availability of that flexibility of response to take place.
Thank you.
Pauline, then we'll move on.
The one that worried me about this was illegal encampments, particularly over the weekend and bank holidays and that sort of stuff. How would you deal with those? Because that's not the sort of thing you want to leave sitting around for 3 days before you do anything.
Again, thank you. So the majority of illegal encampments tend to take place on a Thursday or a Friday when we've had a look through the data. Not all, of course. And in that case, the team are available to deal with those. Like I said, in addition to that, if there is something in particular that requires a response, then the out-of-hours emergency service would be able to respond to that. And we also have continued good dialogue and working relationships with our police colleagues that have powers to deal with exceptional circumstances in relation to illegal encampment-related activity as well.
Yeah, it's just the time that's lost that bothers me, because one of the things we're very good at is moving illegal encampments on quickly and getting private bailiffs involved so that they don't cause too much damage before the shift. And I don't want them spending longer than they have to because we don't work apart from 9 to 5. But if we've got an alternative, that's great.
Moving on, RG17. Looks fairly... Peter.
I think we should celebrate the improvement in air quality in the borough.
Absolutely. RG18.
Very happy with this as well. I'd like to see more tough fines, actually. I've got a couple of areas of Shinfield that get reported very, very, very frequently. I don't know whether we can actually find who's doing it and stop them, because it's the same site over and over and over again.
RG19. Mark.
I just wanted to say that this isn't wishful thinking in any way, as opposed to Rachel's budget in November, probably, where there's quite a lot of wishful thinking as far as growth is concerned. And it's conservative with a small c. Just look at the dust carts and the sponsorship of the dust carts around the borough, and dog poo bins. We've even got, haven't we? Yeah, we have. Sponsored. I won't go on.
Let's keep it on the pack. That's RG19. RG20. Oh, sorry, I'm getting into postcodes now. R20. and the coffee machine is still and the coffee machine's still not working. R20. Jeez. R21, R22, 23.
I was just intrigued by this one.
R22?
No, R23.
Oh, R23, right,
Yeah.
R23.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about it? We've been trying to... Why is it so expensive to monitor Scylla? Why have we underestimated it?
Chair, if I may. So, Nick, do you want to, or do you want me to? I'm happy to. Should I? Yeah. This is obviously a saving, so it will help our revenue position. We, through our SIL income, we can use up to 5% to support the management of SIL, whether that's enforcing it, whether that's producing new guidance, and new fees, etc. We're not using that full 5% at the moment, and so we've looked at our costs in terms of staff time and other associated costs, and we feel it's entirely justifiable to use more of that 5% SIL to support our revenue position. So that's the kind of headline around that.
So where's it coming from? Does that mean that the
developers' contributions?
No, I understand what SIL is. So if you're using 5% of the SIL that you weren't using before, presumably you're not doing whatever you were doing with the 5% before.
So if any of the 5% SIL is not used for revenue management purposes, the balance moves into the general SIL pot to be used for capital purposes and other SIL items. So there is an impact in that side of things, but we feel it's entirely justifiable to cover a greater cost of our revenue expenditure related to the delivery of SIL.
So it's fair enough, but it's not actually saving any money because all you're doing is moving it from one place to another. So you're having to have 5% less money in the bit that spends it.
Ultimately, it's about saving, helping our revenue position to support the costs of the service. So I understand what you mean. It won't go into the capital pot, but it does help our revenue position. And our revenue position is the one at the moment, which is absolutely critical given the gap in our finances. So it feels like the right thing to do.
I don't have a problem with you doing it. It just isn't really a saving. It's just a bit of, what's the word? Creative accounting.
As George says, the real pressure is on our revenue budgets, and it will help there. And I think that's the crucial thing.
Okay, I'd come back to Peter. I think not really, shouldn't really be badged as a saving. It's a redistribution.
Well, I think Peter's general point was about the generic title savings incorporating both savings and income generation. That's a perfectly reasonable point. But income generation is always included under the savings heading. That always has been the case.
It's not a saving. All you're doing is moving money from one pot to another.
It's a saving for the revenue budget. Yes. I think that's the point. We're looking at the revenue budget. We're not looking at the capital budget, just the revenue.
So to be particularly picky, is there another sheet for the capital budget that says a 5% reduction because you're moving it to revenue?
There is a we haven't even got to that yet. If we ever get there, and that is something I'm beginning seriously to doubt, but if we ever get there, there is a lot on capital.
Right, moving on, R24. Need to stop talking postcodes. Right, Louise.
Yes, sorry. I'm sure it's me. I didn't really understand what this was saying. I think that there might be a typo, but since, the use of developers' money for maintenance is an issue close to all our hearts and Norries, I just wondered if you could explain it a bit.
Yeah, so it is quite complicated. There's two parts to it as well. So separate from other reserves held by the council, these are, as you say, developer contributions reserve. They may be because of contributions made by developers for open space or through highway section 38 agreements, 278 agreements. What we have done is reviewed the expenditure that we have in these areas to maintain those areas once they are adopted spaces, and that's the critical thing. So it's adopted space that we are then maintaining. We've looked at the budgets in totality, and what we can see is that there's a sustainable further take from those reserves of around £160,000 each year. So of the 440, 160 of that is an ongoing amount that we feel we can sustainably take from a number of P&G reserves without impacting on our overall sustainable position. So we're not raiding the reserves, it's just a fair use of that. What we are doing as well is that we have an historic amount of money that's been built up in the past as well, and we're deciding to use that money to support our revenue position and use that money spread over 3 years, which makes up the balance of the 160 to 440. I hope that helps.
Yes, I sort of thought that might be it, but that implies then that this is money that could be spent, or should be, depending, spent on maintaining adopted, playgrounds, verges, open space, which is instead being transferred to use for the to support revenue.
Well, essentially, the costs that you just referred to are revenue costs. So the option here is that we find that 440 from the play area budget or from another budget. So it's an effective use. I think that supports the revenue expenditure. So I don't think we're taking anything away as such. We're just being more effective with the resources that we have.
Yeah, I think we judge it as a prudent and safe release of reserves that will enable us to support our revenue budget.
I'm going to move us on because we're only halfway through the revenue budget so far. Let's pick up some pace. I think there's a number of items that we've got now that we might have already dealt with. So we are on to 25.
What is an MTO?
Moving traffic events.
25, I think we've done with the rest of that. 26, I think we've already, no, we've not touched on that one. Any issues on 26? Looks straightforward. Pauline?
That's the same as it was last year, so there is no increase for cost. Is that right? The highways maintenance budget has not increased from last year to this year. Sorry, I'm on to capital. Yeah.
No, it's still the revenue one, so it's not.
This is revenue, but this is inflation. So basically, it doesn't follow standard inflation. It follows inflation. Are we on 20? We are on 26, aren't we now? Yeah. So basically, in line with, it doesn't follow standard inflation. It follows BCIS or CPI, and those rates are slightly different to standard inflation. We've been given standard inflation, but the cost has been higher when it's come through on the contract rate, meaning we've had a deficit, and therefore our budgets have suffered.
27, 28, 29, 29, Caroline,
Yeah.
Catherine.
Well, I don't really understand this. I don't understand the whole, what it's trying to say.
Okay.
High
I'll
level.
explain it. So, take Carnival Pool, for example. Carnival Pool car park, when the gym was opened, we had identified that obviously there'll be additional car parking fees coming in. So we had an income target set against us, but the contract that was issued allowed 2 hours free parking. Therefore, that £120,000 was never seen because it was consumed into obviously that piece. So this is a correction because we've had that as an income target against us, and so it's just correcting that budget. It's a growth item to kind of correct, the past years. Yeah.
I think it might be worth just adding, last year there seemed to be some confusion over this. It was assumed we were proposing a saving by implementing a charge. We were not. This is a growth item in recognition of the fact that no saving could be realised there, despite what was initially thought. So it's a growth item, not a saving. That's important to emphasise.
R30. No. R31. Sorry. Catherine?
Oh, just which car parks? This is 2.
This is 2 and 3 again, so it's Avery Corner and...
It's those 2, right.
31. I think we've already been through this as part of the waste contracts. 32.
Yes.
Pauline?
Last time we discussed this, Dave asked a very interesting question, which was how frequently does the government mandate the collection of doorstep bottles and whatever glass, and whether we could actually just do it once a year and then continue to keep the bring banks and save a load of money on this new project. I've never heard an answer to that.
George
Probably,
or Pam,
well, Pam may want to come in, or Richard may want to come in. We are, before they do, we are continuing to do quite extensive work in terms of the ask of DEFRA around this, the impacts of different options, and what that would mean in terms of funding that we receive elsewhere. We get funding in a different way, and we just get very, along with getting legal advice and technical advice on this, so that we're in the very best position to advise members as to how to move forward with this one. So we're still, so the reason why we haven't got back to you in this committee is that we are still going through that process to review those options.
So that's an assurance that we're not treating this as a fait accompli and bundling ourselves into a large amount of expenditure for services that's worth than what we've got at the moment.
Absolutely, we're reviewing it. We think it's prudent, though, to put that the costs associated with the curbside glass on this growth item for the time being, because it may be something we have to do. But as you say, no decision made at this point in time on that.
Peter, then I'll move on.
Many of those glass recycling banks are in car parks. George, so many of the glass recycling banks are in car parks. When they get removed, you get more parking spaces. So I'm surprised there's no revenue line in this, because you'd be generating more revenue.
Don't suggest
I think it's a great idea. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
We'll take that away.
Thanks, Peter.
I didn't know if Pam wanted to come in. Thanks.
It was only, thank you, I'm conscious of not adding to the time, but I just wanted to say in direct response to Pauline's question about the frequency, the simple answer is that there is no stated frequency from DEFRA and PAC UK. There is guidance, and some councils have pushed that frequency out to kind of up to kind of 6 weekly, I think. So we will look at, rest assured, Pauline, we will look at all alternatives as part of this process. And as George said, that process is ongoing at the moment.
Thank you. Certainly what I think Dave had in mind was annually, with a bonus Christmas, I'm not joking, with a bonus Christmas collection and retaining the glass banks, which are cheaper, more effective, and also actually already do the job.
I think we need to keep pushing DEFRA as hard as we can on that point. Right, I'm going to move on.
It would be sorry. It would be nice if we pushed it to the extent where we were the people that got in before they changed the rule and did give a stated frequency.
Yeah, exactly.
34, public partnership contract extension, straightforward. 35, senior skills and employment service manager. Sorry, Pauline and then Mary Louise. Because that's how many next
We've just been saying how little money we've got. I'm just wondering whether this is good use of it, given all the other things that we're trying to cut. I'm not sure that this is... I understand that in the ideal world, when we've got loads of money, we'd want to do things like this, but I'm not sure it's necessarily our responsibility. It's probably a government responsibility, not a council responsibility. And I'm a bit concerned that we're busy trying to say we're only going to cut grass once a year, but we're willing to spend money on something that we don't already have. Somebody could explain to me why it's so essential, given that employment in Woking Borough is quite good.
Mark or Nick?
Do you want me to come in, Mark? Yeah. Yeah, can do. Yeah, I mean, so sorry, I've not got a name badge there, but I am Nick Irvin. I'm the Service Director for Planning, Economy and Culture. Hello, everyone. Just in terms of this role in particular, so when it comes to economic development, this role in particular, the Senior Skills and Employment Service Manager, has been quite integral around a number of department DWP initiatives around the Connect to Work, for example, Get Berkshire Working and so forth. The role itself, the person in role, has been in role for a period which is in excess of 2 years. So in respect of the actual rights of employment that individual has, it's something that would be accounted for, I suppose, as part of an establishment role. We see it as quite a fundamental role in respect to what the Economic Development Service does. And quite honestly, it's something that we would be keen to see moved on to establishments. It is funded through Section 106, as we say, through to 26, 27. But our preference would be that this is seen as an establishment cost that comes onto the books as such in that respect. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to add anything from your perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've summed it up there, but it's all about building our community's wealth. And we've already got some great examples of this post working for us. So we've got a constructors scheme that we're working with Mace, who are a local builders. We've teamed up with Balfour Beatty and unlocking in-kind work towards apprenticeships, getting into construction early. So it's all about that community wealth building. And you never know, we might be able to fund this post from funds we unlock from business.
I think the issue then is the way this case has been written, because it's quite impenetrable, with some statistics about youth unemployment, all sorts of stuff. Whilst actually, if it had just said what the benefit they've delivered in the last 2 years was, it might have been easier to support.
I would. It's a tidying up exercise.
You need a double glazing salesman, really, don't you, to write it for you?
George, and then we'll move on. George, and then we'll move on.
It was just very briefly to add.
I've got leaded windows.
Just very briefly to add in terms of the importance of this role from a prevention perspective as well. So encouraging those who have had less or more difficulty accessing skills to get those jobs that they would be, where they would thrive in. And there's a real, I think, demand management prevention piece around this particular role, particularly as the year progresses. We'll be developing our skills strategy, particular focus working with our education colleagues around support and linking up with our NEETs on issues around that as well. So it's very much, I think this could be quite easily badged as an investor save to some degree.
I think that
and Nick's already mentioned Connect to Work, which is another critical
It needs to be restated then, I think. The other thing I'm interested in is how it overlaps with Job Centre Plus and all those sort of things that are meant to do the same thing. They may not be doing it properly, but I think that needs to be spelled out.
Yeah, I'm happy to revise that case. Yeah.
Okay, Mary-Louise and Dave.
Yes, I mean, I've raised this before, whether this is a sort of, what Section 106 was developed for, and I completely understand the sort of the commitment that there is to this role, but there are other parties involved in this who not only who might be able to do the job more effectively, but they have to do the job more effectively because it's their, like Job Centre Plus. If we're going to get things moving, we need to have, an employment and skills section that sector that actually contributes. And so again, with this, I didn't quite understand how it related to R20, which was like the removal of discretionary grants, which I could understand as a saving in the sense that that was like, nice to have, not need to have. And then why this is more important. But again, we don't want to labour every single point that is being made.
Dave.
I think Mark suggested that this role could ultimately be supported by a sort of voluntary contribution from private businesses within the borough, and I would be very happy to support the proposal on the basis that he achieves that.
Okay. R36.
I thought you were about to make a contribution.
I'm going to keep us moving forward so we can get to the capital items and the rest of the budget. R36. R37. 38. 39. 40. Mary-Louise?
Sorry, we will get to the end. Just, we had some questions about this, just in terms of the town council, working town council currently spends about 6,000 on graffiti cleaning, and we wanted to know sort of like how this money would potentially relate to that. On a technical note, would this be graffiti cleaning of council property or of the totality of property? I mean, I'm thinking as many of us are probably of the Winnersh underpass and the need that has, which, would probably take more than 10,000. It seems, I'd be interested to know what this, what quite a small amount would actually kind of contribute.
No, thanks for your question. So this one and the next one on fly tipping were actually proposals that were in quite an early stage. So we had actually asked officers to look into, because these are two areas that we do get a lot of comments from residents, look into what could we do, particularly around prevention, specifically for the fly tipping one. So at the minute, these are in quite an early stage, I think. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Richard.
Yeah. No, not much further on that, Mary-Louise, apart from your question around, is it council property or is it wider property? It will be council property only. There's obviously work to do with, those items such as BT covers and boxes and junction boxes that you can see that have been tagged, and working with them, but also working with the local community as well. And there's a few innovative ideas coming out of the local community in terms of murals. So we're looking at those in a bit more detail, and that, your point around underpasses is spot on with that one.
Dave.
Just a very quick question. This is a council document, so I'm surprised it's listed as a Liberal Democrat priority. Surely it should state a council priority, rather than being party political.
I'll just take that. You're quite correct. It's just badly worded. So, yeah. And I'd just say again, that's just because it's in quite the early stages of really looking into it. So it hasn't been fleshed out properly yet. So.
And Chair, my apologies for that. We've been working very hard on these business cases. And that's not, yeah, you're right. It's a council priority indeed.
We'll move on. Oh, sorry, Pauline.
Just, I mean, fly tipping's been a priority for quite a while. And when Peter Baverstock was here, we were buying mobile cameras and all sorts of stuff to try and catch more people. Is that what this is a continuation of, or is it something new?
Yeah, Pauline, it is part of that, but it's also an education behaviour campaign as well linked with this. So we are catching people, but we want to catch more people. So it's also eyes and ears to community in terms of saying or letting us know who they see and what they see and when they see it. We want to really act hard on this because there is a lot of fly tipping up and down the borough, especially around the A33, for instance, and the A4. And we're really keen on catching these people because it is a lot of money that we actually put towards cleaning it up, and we need to prevent this. So that's the remit.
Can I very briefly add, obviously it is a limited amount of money. There's a lot we could, we don't want this to be a bottomless pit, so prevention is key, but I also would flag that the new BIFA waste and street cleansing contract involves a lot more data collection, so part of the intent is to make sure that we can really do something with that and make a noticeable difference.
Yeah, I mean, if we get the enforcement right, it should pay for itself probably until they stop, which would be perfect. A sort of dob your neighbour in line would be excellent. And I'm not joking. Fly tipping really annoys me.
I think it annoys all of us. Moving on, I think we are now down to the last couple of the revenue. 42, 43, 44. We've seen the other side of this, haven't we?
Sorry, just one comment on the town centre strategy. You've got a development officer trying to increase the usage of the town centres and saying footfall remains at 12 to 39% lower. And you've got another bit further back, which is increasing costs of parking by more than inflation. I just worry that they're also pushing in two different directions if we're not careful.
George, and then we'll move on.
It is a really careful balance. You're right. I think we've had information. We're very careful in benchmarking our car parking charges, but there needs to be a sound offer, and I think it goes back to Andy's point really about the country parks, not dissimilar from that really. If the offer is right, if the town centre is somewhere where you'd want to be, then one hopes that residents will come and use the services and participate in that environment. But I appreciate it is a very careful balancing out which we continue to monitor and work very hard with. In particular, this officer is working with town centre managers, so Woodley Town Centre manager as well, supporting them in terms of their events. I think that's really important from a vibrancy point of view and a collaboration approach with parish and town councils as well.
I do think, having talked to quite a lot of shopkeepers in Woodley particularly, there is an issue with people not wanting or not being willing to pay a quid to park to go and buy a newspaper from a newsagent, which means then that the newsagent potentially can't make ends meet. So I do think there's quite a few councils around the place have provided short-term parking free and then ramped it up afterwards, and I do think we should look at that again, because it definitely damages those sort of quick purchase type environments. It doesn't damage, massive shops the same.
I think if we point noted, I think it was also the subject of the motion at council. I think if we just keep plugging through on the rest of this, but your point is well made. Mark?
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, we need a catalyst and a government-led catalyst for business to lead. And, £55,000 is cheap at half the price. And he's hit the ground running. He really, really has. And our businesses, especially in Woodley, have welcomed him. And we're going to collaborate and get this done, really, in £55,000 as opposed to £650,000 for 1 hour's free car parking. It's a no-brainer.
Except that this doesn't actually generate anything unless you actually generate income. And if you're changing things that mean that you're pushing in the other direction, the danger is that it does not generate anything and you just spent £55,000. I've got no problem with this post, by the way. I'm not arguing about that. What I'm saying is you need to look at the short-term impact on businesses, especially small businesses, but all businesses, of being too aggressive on charges.
They're two separate points, but look, no, they absolutely are. No, they absolutely are two separate points.
I'm going to try and keep us from rehashing debates elsewhere. No, I wasn't. RG44. Oh, doing it again. Postcodes. R44. Where is RG44? Should remember that. I should know that. I should remember that one, really. 44. And we haven't got to the capital yet. 45. 46. These are the unavoidable ones. Gone.
What happens if we don't have one in terms of the mineral and waste local plan? And we've spent money on these for years, but I don't know what happens if we don't have them.
We're required to have one. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but what happens if we don't?
Well, I think you get into a certain amount of trouble.
That's the question. How much trouble, and is it worth the cost?
Well, I wouldn't recommend law breaking.
I mean, we don't have to have a local plan. We choose to have a local plan.
We may be, well, I think you're moving into the realms of fantasy here. I think if you're seriously recommending that we break the law, then
no,
I'm not sure that's a helpful contribution.
Is this a law? What benefit does it give us? And what is the disbenefit of not having it?
It is a statutory requirement for a local authority to have a local plan and a minerals and waste plan where applicable. So I mean that's yeah. I mean I don't know what more I can say on that really, Paul. In respect to, I mean that's where the legislation sits in respect of the expectations on authorities to have that and up to date.
So it's a legal responsibility.
It would be, yes.
Obligation.
Yes.
Okay. Could I also just remind you, if we don't have a local plan, we are completely exposed to speculative development of the kind none of us like.
Well, that's the answer.
Okay.
That is absolutely the answer, but I'm just interested to know what the knock-on is if we don't have it, because I know some councils don't.
Well, I'm glad we've reached agreement.
R47, which is the last of the revenue items. Okay, that's revenue done. Capital. So in the capital programme, if I remember this from last year and last time round, the main items that we're looking at are just the ones with the ONS bid references. The rest are already ongoing programmes. So the first one is C4. C11. C12. Is Ali about to jump back to... I'm just reading him off the agenda pack. Because this is how my brain is working today. Yeah, I'm using the summary sheets to drive us through.
Just give us a second there.
This is an absolute eye chart to try and read through.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to go through the summary sheets or just the ones that are in the... Because what we're looking at is the new items on the summary as opposed to every single item has got a capital bid against it, because these are the new ones. And the new ones are the ones that are on the summary sheet. hence why. So it's literally capital.
Are you on page 22?
Yes.
Where are the numbers that you're reading out? C4,
So
The penultimate column on the right.
Got it.
and bizarrely these aren't in numerical order. So this is a game of manual dexterity, to quote from an old Radio 4 program. So C4, C11 we've done. C12. I can't remember. That's just a minute. Is that manual dexterity? Go.
Where are these bridges in Riverside Park? Or rather, more precisely, where is Riverside Park? Because there's a Riverside Park in Early, but I don't think it's got any bridges, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Andy?
Yeah, it's in Richard's area, but it's the bridge on, what's the name of Toseland Close, is it? Toseland Way, sorry, yeah. And there's a bridge that crosses a ditch there which has completely collapsed. So the bearer beam has, it looks like someone's driven a vehicle across it. I think that's what Hong said.
We're jumping back to C1 because it's next on the list, but this is the FPC play area from earlier. C9 is the next on the list. C5, early station footbridge. Pauline.
So I'm interested in this one because I was previously told it was impossible to repair and you had to replace it and it was going to cost £1 million. Is it, bearing in mind we had money last year and didn't spend it, is it actually possible to repair it?
Yep.
Good.
Do you want a bit more? So, you are right. You're right. The original assessments, the team looked at it. We obviously challenged them. They've gone and had another look, come back, and so we've been working with a contractor. We've gone out to tender, and you'll probably realise this one, whilst it's on here, it has gone through and been approved as a separate item already because we've had the tender. We want to be able to commission that, but obviously the money won't come through until February. But we've got that guarantee to kind of proceed. So this one's already been approved, but it's on here still just for information.
I noticed it said in there something about reuse of bolts.
Reuse of?
Bolts.
Bolts?
Fixings. There was a comment in there, I think.
I'd have to check with the team.
Okay. So, yeah, it doesn't matter.
There's an element of patch and replace. So
yeah,
it's
really the question is what's the risk here?
Well, the risk here is it's significantly cheaper than replacement, so it's going to give us longevity on the bridge, hopefully bring it out to the lifespan that we expected it to have originally. Obviously, it's failed sooner, and we're going to get it replaced to bring that.
So the contractor's guaranteeing they're going to do it for the money, yeah?
Yeah. The price we've got is a tendered price, which is why we've got that update in there.
Good. Okay. Excellent.
C10. Just to keep you on your toes, back to C6.
Yes.
Pauline.
Given where that is, which I think is the bridge over the river, Loddon, is that on the main drag just before the Winnish Relief Road? Is that where that is?
It's on. Yes, on Lower Early Way. Yeah.
Yeah. So, bearing in mind that there's a local plan going through that has a huge amount of extra traffic going down that road, will the developer be asked to pay for that, bearing in mind they're going to hammer that bridge with 3,900 extra houses worth of traffic?
It's an existing bridge that obviously we regularly monitor and it's our duty to maintain it. I don't think we'll be able to get them to do maintenance. Obviously, if it needs a new bridge to be wider, bigger, whatever, then obviously, yes, that's something we could obviously seek them to do. That's not one that has got that intention, but this is just typical bridge bearing replacements that we're just going to continue to monitor. At the moment, there's just signs that they're corroding, and it could be a year, could be 5 years, could be 10 years before they fully need replacement. So we're just going to continue to monitor as we do our whole structural network.
So this is just normal maintenance?
Normal maintenance,
okay.
Standard bridge bearing maintenance, yeah.
Thank you.
Apologies, C7, I think the same comments will probably get made about pushing DEFRA and not, yeah. C8, something we have to do.
Sorry, no, that's something that you know has an enormous risk attached to not doing it. So.
So that's the capital list. Anything else on those items that we haven't covered off? If not, huge amount of things. My concern is we'll have to come back and have a look if we've taken items out or if things do come out as a result, we'll have to find new things to put back in. But okay. Yeah. Anything else that we haven't covered off on these items? If not, I think we can start to release a lot of people from this room. Stephen, do you want to summarise anything?
Just to thank the committee for some helpful suggestions and things that we will take away and look at. But just to reiterate your point, Mark, that obviously we need to be mindful if we do take things out, we have got to put something else in. So just need to bear that in mind.
And I'd like to thank all the officers that have stayed for this item tonight. This has been a very comprehensive run through, which I think reflects the scale of some of the challenges we face. So thank you very much. If anybody would like to stay, you're very welcome to stay. We're already about a third of the way through the agenda, but, you know, thank you very much. If anybody else wishes to leave, please feel free, and if not, we'll crack on.
I have the offer of a lift home, which I'm afraid is a bit attractive.
Go. Right. Thank you for those on the call that are leaving as well. And thank you all officers that have been here for your contributions and input. Right, we are going to move on in time, and we are now, God, going right back to the beginning. This is the one drawback with using online. Right. Next item on the agenda as we go through this is we are going to be looking at the residential parking permits.
Sorry, my...
Adrian, are you going to set this one up?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you very much. So we're here to talk about proposals to change the policy and zonal arrangements for residential parking zones. The review was initiated to respond to concerns raised by residents in existing controlled parking areas, including the availability of spaces on the road in which their permit was valid, other issues such as the ability to have permits for visitors and easier arrangements for permits for carers. We spent some time benchmarking how we currently do things, what good practices are in terms of policy and costs in other local authorities, which led to some proposals which went out for a fairly extensive consultation in which we sought residents' views and opinions on all aspects of the policy and on the zones. We've got a presentation coming up now from Matt Gould and Ola Koya, who will take you through the approach we've taken and some of the detail in terms of the responses. We are hoping to take this to the executive in a couple of weeks' time, so very much looking forward to your observations and questions this evening. Thank you.
Over to you.
How long have I got?
This is a really important topic.
How fast do you want me to do it? Okay, well, thank you. So, to start with, I need to change the page. Why is it not turning the page over? That's it, isn't it? Oh, there we go. My bad. Right, so I just wanted to just briefly outline the background and rationale. So, the current permit scheme has been in place since 2017. Throughout Woking, there are 16 controlled parking zones. The majority of these zones are introduced on a street-specific boundary. One of the main challenges we faced is the inconsistency in applying enforcement and permit rules across these zones, which has led to unfairness and inefficiencies. The current parking permit scheme has disparity in the number of permits that can be issued per property. Some zones allow for residents-only parking with short-term up to 2 to 4 hours parking for non-residents. There is no formal visitor parking scheme in operation, and the current zonal schemes have different hours of operation and different days of operation. So these inconsistencies often lead to non-compliance and confusion amongst our residents, their visitors and other non-residential users, and has been a source of complaints from residents within these CPZs. So to address these issues, we drafted a new policy. This has set out an updated approach to managing our curbside and residential parking, and the aims of the policy were very much to simplify and standardise the residence permit scheme to ensure fairness across all areas and effectively manage demand, but also to prioritise households that do not have off-street parking. All these proposals have been based on local curbside assessments and best practices from other local authorities. So our proposals, as I said, are a result of combining information from residents' complaints, from officer understanding, from data collected from curbside assessments, data modelling and research through benchmarking and best practices with other neighbouring authorities. This has helped us to create an approach tailored to Woking Borough Council, and we've benchmarked against authorities including Reading, Bracknell Forest, Slough, Windsor, Maidenhead and Oxfordshire. The focus of that research was to understand the permit prices and allocation criteria, and our findings revealed that all benchmarked authorities allowed 2 or more permits per household. They had a uniformed approach across all CPZ areas, that tiered pricing models were commonly used to manage demand, and all authorities provided visitor permits. So all this benchmarking has led us to a few key policy changes for the residence permits. For residents permit allocations, we proposed a uniformed approach, a maximum of 2 permits per household, dependent on the availability of off-street parking. For houses of multiple occupancy, we have the same residence permit eligibility and allocation as other households, with a maximum of 2 permits on a first-come, first-served basis. All resident permits will be issued as virtual permits, allowing up to 3 vehicles per permit, although only 1 can be active at any one time. And regarding pricing the permits, we proposed a tiered pricing structure. So the first permit would be for £55 and the second permit would be £105. This tiered pricing is designed to reflect the increased demand on limited curbside space caused by households with multiple vehicles. By charging more for the second permit, the policy aimed to discourage some from applying for the second permit. Blue badge holders would continue to receive free permits with a maximum of 2 per household. Currently, we have 1 per household. Eligibility and permit charges for residents receiving state pensions would be aligned with other households and residents. Currently, they receive permits free of charge. So for visitor, forgive me, that's just jumped 8 pages. Let's go 1 page at a time. For visitor permits, we propose to introduce a new product. This product would be permits that would be virtual only and issued with a choice of up to 4 durations: 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours and 24 hours. These permits would be issued in batches of 10. There would be an annual household cap of 100 permits per property, with a reduced cap of 50 permits in areas where there is a high demand for curbside parking. We propose to redefine residential parking zone boundaries using a zonal approach across all zones to increase residents' parking availability in existing zones, as well as reduce pressure on curb space. We would standardise residents' parking zones operating hours to be 24/7 to reduce confusion and improve space management. All limited waiting bays and restrictions within these zones would be consistent with the hours of operation in our car parks, Monday to Sunday. So just sort of recap on the methodology. We obviously started our journey with step 1, where this was a foundational stage. It included extensive benchmarking against other authorities, a review of existing issues and review of existing control parking zones. This then informed the policy formulation. This was based on the data. We created and proposed a draft policy. This involved initial internal discussions with relevant officers and members to shape the core document. The draft then fed directly into step 3, which is the engagement step. This is a vital stage where we sought external input. A public consultation was undertaken to gather broad community feedback and ran for a 6-week period between the 13th of August to the 28th of September. We're currently between steps 3 and 4, where we're seeking your views on this, and we are preparing to take the policy to be considered executive later this month. We would look to then implement towards the end of the financial year, towards the end of the calendar year, or as soon as practically possible. So, we now skip on to the consultation bit, so I'll ask Ola now to run through the engagement process and just outline some of the key findings through the process.
Thanks, Matt. So we'll just, sorry, next slide. Thanks.
You want the next one?
Yeah. So just quickly, we'll just, I'm just mindful of time, so I might just whiz through some of the consultation feedback, if that's okay. So firstly, we'll touch on what we did in terms of the engagement process. So this is a public consultation with, it was a borough-wide consultation. The consultation period lasted between 13th of August and 20th of September, so over 6 weeks. And the purpose was to gather feedback on the proposed policy, or proposed policies, which Matt has just run through earlier. The key proposals, just to reiterate those, that was the shift from the street-based to a zonal-based parking arrangement for parking zones, changes to resident permit fees or an introduction of tiered pricing, as well as a review of the eligibility, introduction of visa permits and eligibility for those, rationalising hours of control for all permit zones, and a clear process for requesting new resident zones. Sorry, I'm on the wrong laptop. Apologies. Right. So from the consultation, we had 520 responses, and of those, 98% were residents of Wokingham Borough. 10% were businesses, and of those, 58%, which is the majority, lived within existing or proposed parking zones. So essentially, there were residents who were directly affected. Apologies, one step I failed to mention earlier was, as part of the engagement process, there was targeted letters sent to the residents who live within existing parking zones, as they're directly affected, so they had targeted material and information sent to those. In addition to that, there was promotion on local media for the local businesses as well, to provide feedback, and there was also a social media campaign as well as within the local press. Just touching back on those who responded. So majority of responses, as mentioned, were from residents that lived within the existing or proposed zone who were directly impacted. We provided a unique identification reference to kind of help determine who lived within those, but there was also an information flag, and 43% of those 58 provided us with a unique identification number. However, we added a flag and were able to identify, even if they didn't provide a unique identification number, whether they were residents or not. But that information is there just for information purposes. So what we heard. So this is what we've broken down. As mentioned earlier, there were different elements of the policy which we consulted on. The first step is the approach to resident parking zones, so i.e. changing from a street-based to a zonal-based approach. Of the responses received, there were 386 responses received in total. So although in general across the whole consultation there were 520, not every respondent answered every single question. So hence the reason why you have a bit of a flux in the numbers for each question. Of those, majority responded within the existing zone, which is as highlighted earlier. And for the first question about the proposed change, majority did not support the proposals. However, when we delved into it further, we could see that there were actually trends. Apologies. Thank you. there were also trends in particular areas. And the reason why we analysed it further was just to make sure that there weren't high responses from particular roads that distorted the overall responses. So we had to look at where the trends are. And there were some trends highlighted showing that majority of the residents or responses from the Twyford area actually supported the proposed change from a street specific to a zonal approach. So I'd say the only existing zone that did not support the change was London Road, the residents of London Road, and that's also been accounted for in our recommendations, which will be coming up. And within Wokingham itself, there was a bit of a mixed picture in terms of some zones did support it, some zones didn't. So, and obviously that's also been taken into consideration. Thank you. Another question, the second question was, now as part of the proposals, there was also a proposal to expand some of the existing permit zones into some of the adjacent roads, and the reason for that was to create more parking opportunities within those zones for the residents, and also some of these roads may also be suffering from what we call displacement parking, i.e. residents who don't want to park within the existing zones park in the nearby free roads. And the responses to those, there were 272 responses received, and overall there was support, majority support from the feedback, as has been seen, especially for those that resided within either the existing or the proposed zones, did support the proposals to expand the zones, but to introduce the restrictions or amend the boundaries to cover the adjacent roads. Thank you. And now the second element, which is permit pricing. And this is, residents were consulted on the principle of tiered pricing. So they were just shy of 400, so just under 400 responses received to the question. And of those, about 42%, and 50%, so that is from outside and within the zone respectively, did not support the principle of tiered pricing, you see. However, we've also analysed it a bit further to look at the trends, and when you actually delve into the data further, what we found were where for the households, the majority of, I suppose, opposition came from households with 2 or more vehicles, which can be said. However, households with 1 or less vehicles actually did support the proposal for tiered pricing, which kind of highlights a bit of a, I suppose, not competitive, but household kind of difference in that. But however, overall, there wasn't support on the principle of tiered pricing. Thank you. And then the next question on the permit pricing was aligning the policy of residents in receipt of state pension, essentially to match the rest of permit holders or residents. So, i.e., at the moment, residents in receipt of state pension currently receive free permits, but aligning that policy and the pricing with other residents. Overall, 362 responses were received, and the majority of responses did not also support the proposals, and that was clear within sort of responses from people residing within the permit zones and outside the permit zones. That being said, there was a bit more support from residents residing within the permit zones than outside the permit zones. Thank you. Now, just going on to the next element, which is permit eligibility. Now, this is what we would look. This area basically looks at consulting or obtaining feedback on proposals to standardise the number of permits issued to properties. At the moment, different zones have different allocations or number of permits that can be issued, as Matt mentioned earlier, and this is to standardise that to 2 permits for all households, depending on availability of off-street parking. Once again, just under 400 responses received, and there was, within and outside, there was majority support for those policy proposals. And also looking at proposals to align HMOs, which are houses of multiple occupancy, and standardise those policies as to the number of permits also that they can also obtain, i.e. 2 permits on a first-come, first-served basis. And there was also support for that, for those proposals. Thank you. Vista permits. Proposals to introduce vista permits within permit zones, and this is to provide more, I suppose, a product that residents can offer to their visitors to allow them parking opportunities. 410 responses received overall, and overall there was support, and also what we also found was there was a higher support in terms of from residents within the parking zones, over 52%, which is quite high. Thank you. Next one. Thank you. And then proposals for durations and the restrictions on the number of permits were also consulted on. With this, there was a bit of a, I suppose there was a bit of a mixed feedback, because there was support for the vista permits, for the vista permits. However, there wasn't as wide a support for the durations and for the number 100 permits per household and 50 in high parking stress areas. I think the one thing to note about that is there was, from the other feedback, is there wasn't a clear feedback from residents as to what it is they wanted to see in terms of durations. And just two more elements. One is the resident parking zone restrictions, and the proposals to standardise the restriction hours across all zones. With these, now there were two elements that were consulted on. One was to make the resident permit zones 24/7, so i.e. if it was a resident-only bay, making that apply at all times to provide more protection for the residents. And where it's a limited waiting bay, they'll align those hours to match the car parks, essentially. So they'll continue to be free, and they'll continue to have maximum stay periods, just the hours of operation when they align those with the car parks. So of those, 418 responses received, and there was overall majority support for both proposals. And lastly, we also consulted on making how residents can request for permit zones clearer. So I provided a proposed process for how these can be requested and how they will be considered by the council. Because one thing, I think one element that residents weren't fully clear on, and some of the feedback was, how do we request for it? How is it considered? How do I know that this to go ahead? So as part of that, a clear process was has been included in the proposed policy. And from that there was once again, there was majority support for those proposals. Okay, so I just hand over to Matt to go through the
recommendations. Okay. So, just to be clear, we are committed to delivering a fair, consistent and sustainable approach to managing curbside space and residence parking. Benchmarking across Berkshire authorities showed that Wakeham's current permit prices are among the lowest in the region, and we do not fully recover administrative costs. The policy seeks to establish a more efficient and equitable residence parking scheme that prioritises fairness, supports sustainable travel choices for short trips, and contributes positively to the local economy. It addresses existing pressures on parking capacity by expanding controlled parking zone boundaries where needed and improving overall management of available curbside space. To ensure fairness and permit eligibility and allocation would be standardised across all zones, households without off-street parking will be eligible for up to 2 permits, while those with off-street spaces will have a reduced entitlement. Residents will be able to register up to 3 vehicles per permit, but use only 1 at a time, allowing flexibility for multi-vehicle households without compromising curbside management. Houses of multiple occupancy will be treated consistently with other households, ensuring a fair and transparent approach. Visitor permits are being introduced to improve flexibility for residents, enabling guests and tradespeople to park conveniently within the controlled zones. Their pricing has been benchmarked against comparable authorities and set below typical off-street parking rates to ensure affordability while discouraging misuse. Limited waiting bays will remain available for short-term visitors to support local businesses, and we will continue to provide carer permits for essential care providers and free permits for disabled residents. It is recognised that residents have differing needs, and we have sought to strike a balance between operational efficiency and flexibility. Fixed visitor permit packs simplify administration and reduces our costs. Permit rules and eligibility criteria will be reviewed every 5 years to ensure that they continue to reflect community needs and best practice. Concerns regarding the potential impact on elderly, disabled and vulnerable users and residents have been considered very carefully. Continuation of dedicated carer permits and free disabled permits ensure that these requirements ensure that those requiring additional support are not disadvantaged. It is also proposed that we align pensioner permit prices with standard rates, but with a means-tested approach for those in receipt of pension credit. Although overall there wasn't support to the proposed approach of changing residence parking zone boundaries from street-specific to area zones, when we looked at the responses in more detail, the majority of the roads within Twyford, except London Road, supported the proposals. Therefore, we are recommending that we proceed with the zone changes in Twyford, with the exception of London Road, and we then do some further assessments of those boundaries in Wokingham before making any changes to those zones. So, in summary, just so that, you know, this is obviously going to executive later this month, our recommendations to the executive are to approve the residence parking policy, taking account of these changes following the consultation, to approve the introduction of a tiered pricing structure for the residence permits across all zones, and with the introduction of visitor permits with a pricing structure in line with benchmarking, and to approve the introduction of the zone boundaries in Twyford, except for London Road, and then to note that through the IMD process, and in consultation with the exec member and the service director, we will make a decision on the proposed changes to the other zones in the areas covered by this consultation. That then takes me to the end and opens it up for questions.
I've got Mary Louise first. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all your work. As you know, this is close to my heart and close to many, I'm sure all wards, ward councillors' heart. The first thing I want to say is on a matter of principle, which is that consistency is not the same as fairness. Yeah, we live in a diverse borough. There are different, you know, permit zones are in different areas with different needs, and sometimes I think that we run the risk of going for a more rigid form of standardisation because we confuse that with fairness, and also, to be frank, because it's in terms of our contracts. Yeah, it's cheaper in terms of a contract. So I just want to flag that, you know, we're going to need to be a bit flexible going forward, or I think we should be more flexible because of the diversity of our borough. And so I'll talk about sort of like one specific street in as you know, we've had a long struggle on the issue of visitors permits, and I'm very pleased to hear that, you know, there's progress on that. I would just to check, this will be by residents, not by, it will be per residence, not per vehicle registered. Yeah, so a householder who doesn't have a car can still apply for a residence permit.
No. No, you will.
For a visitor's permit, yeah.
Yes, visitor permits,
absolutely. A visitor's permit, so they
visitor
can.
Permits is
yeah, so that's a new thing which will be very much well received,
yes.
and you know a lot of people will be very pleased about that. The issue of it being virtual, as you know, many of our residents have put forward very strongly that they want paper paper permits that can be, you know, transferred from car to car. And I recognise the issues in terms of cost, but again, I want to say horses for courses. You know, where this is necessary, it should be considered and not. You know, it is tremendously important, particularly in relation to care visits, sometimes which can last like 15 minutes, yeah? And a great deal of that time can be taken up trying to enter the car number on the permit and so on. So I think we cannot put away the idea of paper permits so quickly. And finally, in terms of care, I know that in terms of the care permit, you're talking about negotiating or agreeing with the carer, the suppliers, as it were. I think in terms of talking to Social Care Futures, they would be very keen to put forward the issue of informal carers and how they're going to be, enabled to do their visiting support role with this. So just that. Lots of, but as you know, we've been at this a long time.
Yes, thank you for your comments. We will certainly reflect on those. It is difficult. There is no one size fits all. I appreciate that across the borough. We desperately would like to find a consistent approach across the borough, and through our benchmarking, many of the authorities that we benchmark do have a consistent approach across the board. So we would like to continue with that. I agree consistency isn't always the same as fairness, but at some point there will be a location where they're restricted to one permit and their neighbours around the corner get two, and they would see that as being unfair. So having a consistent approach in that respect does give you some sort of fairness across the board. Virtual permits, the paper permits is an issue. Obviously we're moving through into the 21st century, moving quickly through that. Paper is now a somewhat of an old system that we don't tend to use here now anymore in terms of car permits. Our enforcement systems use handheld computers. They have the registration plates on their machines. They don't go and look into a car window and see if there's a permit. They don't look in a car park and see if you've got a display ticket. It's all electronic now using registration plates, which obviously you can't do so easily.
Sorry.
So I absolutely get it.
Yeah.
But we need to recognise that we're moving forward in technology and things like this happen. And the carer issue, obviously, you've got the visitor permits, which I would hope would make things an awful lot easier, particularly for the informal carers in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just one response. This is why people hate us, because we ask and ask and ask, and residents ask and ask, and they're told no, because of consistency, because of cost, because you're not living in the right century. If we're going to consult, we have to take on board what people's responses. Otherwise, it's meaningless. So, I think I'm going to take this away and consult with my colleagues, because this is, I want to say this is quite disappointing after so long of waiting to have such a dismissal of something which is, of real importance. If you have a 15-minute visit, you do not want to be spending 5 minutes of that trying to get online, trying to enter the number, cars are, the visiting cars might not be the same car every time. All the issues that we talked about, so we will move on.
Adrian.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is being dismissed. I think the assumption that the solution is paper permits is potentially what Matt isn't agreeing with. I think the points you make are valid points about the requirement, and the onus on the team is to work out how we deliver that in a cost-effective and practical way. And it may well be that some of people's concerns about not having a paper permit, there are solutions to that. The onus is on us, I think, to take that away in conjunction with colleagues in social care and others, and come up with solutions that work for them, not necessarily to assume that the solution is a paper permit.
No, absolutely. And with regard to that, there was also the mention of, in terms of informal carers, of getting a letter from the GP that would enable you to get a carer's permit. And I think that's something that needs to be discussed with Social Care Futures, because as a carer, I've never had a letter from the GP, and I'm not sure that Wokingham Medical Centre would be that pleased with like hundreds of people writing. I'll tell you who would be pleased, and that's the private GPs who would probably issue that letter. But that has then, you know, what I would call a genuine fairness issue. So again, I would urge that these sort of these aspects, particularly to do with informal care, are discussed thoroughly with Social Care Futures, because they have, you know, the experience.
Dave.
Yeah, I just wondered why we had to restrict it to 3 cars per thing, particularly if the system is sophisticated enough that it only allows you to use 1 vehicle at a time. So I can understand if you had a situation where you didn't want somebody using 2 or 3 cars and dominating the spot, but if you can only use 1 at a time, why are we restricting it to 3 registrations?
I don't think there's any science to it, really. It can be more if we want it to be.
I just don't see why there should be a restriction, really. I think it's
probably design the system.
I mean, it's unlikely that the resident would have more than 3 or 4 cars, perhaps. But yeah, we could certainly look at increasing the numbers. It doesn't have to be restricted quite so tight.
Peter.
Just coming back to the visitor permit process. Although it's supposed to be electronic, it's kind of it's couched in, you know, books of 10 with different time. We seem to be merging 2 models here. If it's electronic, it's online, we shouldn't have to restrict people to buy 10 at a time. They should buy what they need. I can imagine the frustration having to, you know, you've got 1 visitor coming for 24 hours once a year. You've got to buy a book of 10. It restricts to 100 vouchers. Is that 100 days? Or is it, you know, if I get a 15-minute, or it just seems overly complicated. We should have flexibility. It's online, just buy a permit for what you need, for the time length you need, a single permit, and take the costs. We shouldn't have to force people to do booklets of 10 online.
Hi, yes, something we can take away, but I think one of the key elements of why that was also restricted to 10 was also to avoid abuse in terms of people buying too much and hoarding it. So by restricting to 10, it does not mean that they can't buy more than 10, they just buy them in batches of 10. So if you wanted to buy 3 batches of 10, you can do it.
I think more about single use. Yeah, one batch.
I think it's a, I think the general observation is we've got better use of technology. Can we not give that flexibility to people? I think if people want to buy and prepay for a block of 200 visitors permits and then use them, then that just generates more income for us. I think I agree with Peter. We should be, with technology making it easier, we should just be making it easier for people to buy 1 if they want 1, or at least looking into that. Peter, is that the point you were making?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Online, simple, just give people what they need.
Okay. Very happy to take it away and look at that. I think the terminology book, I think you're right. It's
from yesteryear.
Yeah, it's just a way of describing it. It's a batch. But I get that, yes.
And also the survey feedback was very negative on that proposed visitor section, and perhaps if it was more flexible, you might got better feedback.
Yeah, I think what we said when we talked about that just now is that we know there was a negative feedback, but there's no indication of what they actually wanted instead of it. Yeah. So yeah, we're more than happy to take that.
Caroline.
Thank you. It's 2 questions, well, 1 question and observation. HMOs, you have them for 2, and I know some HMOs for 2 parking, and I know some in early, some have got 8, 9, 10 bedrooms. I just wonder what the rationale is, just having 2 permits for an HMO.
An HMO is
Yes.
a standard house that's got multiple people staying
Yeah.
in it. So it is a house with a driveway, a garage perhaps, but you've got 8 families staying in it. Right? We cannot accommodate on our streets parking spaces for 8 residents in the same house. It would be unfair on the rest of the residents in the street. Where a house is split physically into different property addresses, so that you have a house that's been split into two flats and it's got an address, then those two properties will be considered as separate properties. But when it's one house with one front door, but with multiple occupants in it, we feel that it was appropriate to restrict that so that they're more consistent with other households of the same size.
So before I go to Paul, did you have a...
I was just going to ask, you said about a 5-year review. Seeing this as a new process, could we have it a bit sooner than 5 years? I was thinking maybe 2 years. After 2 years, have a review to see how well it's going, because I think 5 years is a long time for a new system, particularly seeing there might be hiccups or whatever, like the difference between a paper. Thank you.
Certainly, we'd take that into advisement. I mean, we chose 5 years because that's the standard sort of approach that you take to a new policy. You give it 5 years to bed in and have a look at it. But if we feel that there's a need to do it sooner, you know, we're not bedded to 5 years. We could do it sooner if we felt it was necessary.
But then I guess also if we detect if there is a significant challenge that comes up after a year or two, then that would be enough for us to be able to look at it proactively and go, actually, we need to look at this earlier.
Very much, yes.
Before I go to Pauline, the point I was also thinking of that Caroline just raised is if we're making a point to say, should it be 3 maximum or 15 or 5, you're going to look at the numbers for a household. We need to make sure that actually what we're doing is we're going to allow people to register multiple cars because they can only use 1 or 2 at a time, that what we don't inadvertently do is cause a problem with HMOs. Yes. I agree, we can't have, you know, an HMO of 8 dwellings or 5 dwellings that could have 15, 16 cars. I'm over-exaggerating numbers. We just need to make sure that we're excluding or treating those. Pauline?
I think the HMO point is right. I mean, the planning permissions that are given for houses assume 2.5 parking spaces per house, 2 of which are on the drive, half is on the road. You could easily limit them to 1. I think what you're doing is being reasonable. I agree, I don't think you could possibly cope with 8 in most places. How many paid parking zones do we actually have? I don't think we have all that many, do we?
16. We have 16 CPZs currently in the borough.
So not many.
Not many at all. We know there's requests for more.
So final question for you. What proof do you request from residents in order to say that they are entitled to a permit? Because I've had a few problems with Reading where they ask for tenancy documents and people don't have tenancy documents because they aren't a proper tenant. And then they come and park on our roads rather than the Reading ones because they can't get a permit, apparently, allegedly. Do we have that problem or not?
Proof of residency and proof of car ownership is what we would require. So potentially we were in the same issue with the tenancy agreements, if that is an issue, which we can look at. But that is the principle, yes.
Yeah, presumably we have less of that issue than Reading do, but it's just an observation, if it's true.
Yeah.
Mary-Louise.
Yes. Sorry, just with the HMOs, we have to anticipate there is going to be a serious compliance issue because people are going to rent without knowing about the parking restrictions. That's not something that a landlord is going to, inform. So just that there needs to be built in, and I agree with the idea of a review of how this is managed. Yeah. Because we do expect the number of HMOs, they've doubled, haven't they, since 2019. We expect them, because of housing costs and other, problems with housing here in the borough, we expect them to improve, to rise again. So I think we should anticipate that issuing 2 permits for an HMO doesn't mean that that's going to be accepted. And you need to have a plan for that.
Just to follow on from that, maybe that's a position where we should be looking at HMO licensing for HMOs that are smaller than these little zones that Reading have, where it doesn't matter how big your HMO is, you need a license for it, which then could take into account the need for parking, because that's something that certainly when there are quite a few HMOs in some of the estates in Shinfield, caused a huge amount of problems
Yeah.
with all the parking bays around the roundabouts, if you remember.
Absolutely.
Until we sorted that out. So there might be an argument, I can't remember what the name of the regulation is, but there's a regulation that...
Article 4 direction.
Article 4 direction, that's it. To maybe look at putting Article 4 directions in areas that have got on-street parking, that have got the potential to have a lot of HMOs on it, so that we can then control it better.
I think it's good feedback, and I'd agree with it. I've seen it in other areas as well. Maybe not for the policy for this. Dave?
Just one very small thing. Car ownership, you said, was a requirement for proof of permit. Just factor in the fact that some people have company cars.
Absolutely, yes. So some form of...
They might not own cars.
No, but you will be able to demonstrate that a vehicle is yours to use, I hope. So, yeah, I mean, the devil will be in the detail, but, you know, we can work that through.
And just because we happen to be having a couple of conversations about parking and technology, presumably the companies that we use or for the e-permit system or digital permits would just be one of the standard national ones. So we're not going to be using...
But we already have a back office system that issues permits, and that would be the one that we continue to use, subject to the new contract with parking services.
And literally the point I was going to make with all of that is that they have a lot of the technology built in. I've had the problem before with company cars, and most of these systems are smart enough to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. Any other comments, questions? Anything else other than to note and pass this through, and good luck. And thank you for staying till this point in the time. And
thank you.
We shall move on because we've got a couple more items to go, but thank you very much. Anything else that comes up that people haven't thought of, just feed that back in. If not, Adrian, this is going to exec sooner rather than later.
On the 19th of 20th of this month.
So if there are any other comments to come back through, then feed them back in fast. And if not, thank you very much, and we shall move on to the next item on the agenda. And we are now going... There's a common theme to what we're looking at tonight. We're now looking at... I'm trying to get my laptop to work. We're now looking at the parking enforcement contract. Adrian, is this you as well?
Yeah, if you can... It is. Yeah, I'm having a bit of an ONS month this month.
Right, almost there, guys.
We have an outsourced parking enforcement contract at the moment. We're looking ahead to when that is due for renewal. Hopefully this should be a fairly straightforward item we can rattle through fairly quickly, but as you wish. And Vicky is here to talk us through the approach we're taking and to look for your observations and questions, please. Thank you.
Excellent. Evening, everyone. I'm Vicky Roberts, and I'm the Highways Contract Manager. So we've just compiled a few slides to highlight the key points around the report. We'd like to go through that with you and then open it up for discussion. So over the past few months, the team and our consultants, Founds Group, have reviewed the current parking contract, enforcement contract, which is due to expire at the end of September 2026. We've looked at the current operating model and explored other options. We've carried out benchmarking analysis against other councils, and we've looked at new opportunities and social value initiatives for inclusion in the new contract. And finally, we've looked at the most beneficial procurement route. So the report of these findings and recommendations were put forward to CLT in the summer, and a report is to be presented at Executive at the end of the month. And these recommendations are to procure using a single outsourced supplier model, use the new Crown Commercial Services framework to procure the service either by a direct award or further competition, future-proof the contract by including new opportunities and social value initiatives. And as part of this, we wanted to engage with yourself to get feedback to try and make this contract as robust as possible. So why outsource parking? The benefits are on the slide, but I think it's really important to understand that regardless whether the work is carried out in-house by Wokingham or outsourced by a private company, currently NSL, the regulations governing the parking enforcement are determined by the policies that are set out by the local authority. So this enforcement contract doesn't set the rules, it's purely here to make sure that those parking rules are enforced fairly, consistently and openly. So with that in mind, the main benefits of continuing to work with one supplier is, very much around the financial efficiencies by utilising economies of scale, sharing resources across contracts and managing things more efficiently, which helps reduce the overall costs and service quality. The specialist skills and knowledge the external company can provide us really does help us do the job better. The Parking Enforcement Services is a really specialist service, and there's probably only 2 or 3 suppliers in the UK that can carry out this suite of services. So having that larger organisation gives us that ability to flex up and down according to demand. They're also leaders in the area, so any new laws or technologies that affect parking, they help us keep ahead of the game. It's really important to talk about transfer of risks. By having the outsourced supplier, we transfer a lot of operational and financial risks. They're such as problems that we might have with equipment, staffing shortages, or failing to deliver the services in those strict timescales that we've got. This enforcement contract isn't just about people enforcing, and there's several specialist service functions for parking, and having those functions managed by one supplier really does make that service more uniform. So for instance, those are like the ANPR cameras, the parking apps, the process systems, cash collections and sort of machine maintenance. And if we brought that back in-house, we'd have to have like multiple contracts to manage that. And all of these things can be managed by clear agreements and performance standards within the contract to ensure the supplier does the job properly. And if they don't meet those standards, then penalties can be used to encourage better performance. So they're the reasons why we are recommending to continue with an outsourced supplier. We're always looking for improvements within any new contract. We've carried out benchmarking with our Berkshire counterparts. However, it's quite difficult to compare one parking service to another authority's parking service if we just look at like revenue and income due to the size, geography, number of controlled parking zones, whether they've got a big town centre. So that's not overly useful, but one of the areas that we have explored was whether other authorities have expanded the use of their enforcement officers to take on more environmental enforcement roles. So we've spoken to Westminster and Hackney Council, who are sort of leaders in this area, and although their vision along with their size of operation and income are vastly different to ours, there were some initiatives that we thought would be a real benefit. So one of these things are we really want to promote this notion of parking ambassadors in the new contract, so effectively making the officers eyes and ears of the council rather than waiting for members of the public to report an issue. So those things would be like reporting antisocial behaviour, fly tipping, a pothole, whilst not detracting from their sort of like core duties of parking enforcement. We also want to put a price in to look at removal of antisocial activity from the highways, such as abandoned vehicles and abandoned and illegally parked vehicles, to try and create this positive environment for residents, visitors and businesses. The new contract will work closely with our customer services team, handling calls and questions, making sure the customer has that sort of smooth, seamless approach from start to finish. And additionally, we want to look at AI to help improve the service. I'll come on to the Crown Commercial Services framework in a minute, but the framework suppliers have already committed to several social value initiatives that are on the slide, which Wokingham will benefit from. So, in short, trying to make this contract more than just a stark enforcement contract. So, as I mentioned before, given the specialist nature of the service, there is only a limited amount of suppliers that actually can do it. And we've been really fortunate that the Crown Commercial Services, who are one of the largest public procurement organisations, have just launched a new framework, and Lot 3 is the Parking Services Framework Agreement, which includes all the major suppliers and their updated rates. So again, the benefits are listed on the slide, but in short, the framework will provide us with both time and cost savings, as it eliminates the need for us to carry out a full tender process, because the suppliers have already undergone vetting and due diligence. In legal terms, the terms and conditions have been agreed upon up front, ensuring compliance and also saving with legal costs. So shortly we will be proceeding with a request for information to understand the market capabilities and gather supplier insights. And additionally, we'll look at value for money assessment so we can compare costs across the suppliers. Following that market analysis, we can then determine the most appropriate procurement route, whether we direct award or carry out a mini competition. So in terms of timeline, we're looking to start the procurement process between January and April, with an award date of end of May for mobilisation and the commencement of the contract in October 2026. So that is the report in a nutshell. Like any questions or comments?
Thank you for that. Jane first.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, these people are never going to be flavour of the month, parking enforcement people. And I have to say, I can only talk for Wokingham Town. I often walk across Denmark Street car park. I don't even have a car park there, but I feel quite intimidated when they're hunting in packs. And I had a resident just last week phone me and say she'd no sooner got out of her car than someone was walking towards her. And she said, I'm just going to get a ticket. And he said, you've got 6 minutes. It's just, so I think part of the new contract, if we really want them to be ambassadors on behalf of our council, they have to engage as we would expect our officers and ourselves to engage. And I think enforcement is important, but how they enforce is really important if they're going to build trust and fulfil those roles.
Thank you for those comments. Personally, I'm quite disappointed to hear that, and it makes me quite angry that the enforcement officers would be doing that. It's not something that we have ever asked them to do, and it's certainly not something that we've encouraged them. We tried to make them more supportive, and our feedback has been actually that they've been more supportive to our residents than previously. We've had some very good feedback recently, where officers have actually gone out of their way to help our residents with cars and things. So that's really disappointing to hear.
I've only got experience of one car park, but I don't feel I wouldn't go to them in a time of need. And for that resident, and she's a victim of domestic abuse, she's highly anxious.
Okay. Well, moving forward with the new contract, it is our intention to try and embed the enforcement officers much more into a council ethos. Right. So we would include them as part of the induction process. We'd include in a lot of our own internal training, so that they become more Wokinghamised than they are currently. Brilliant. That would be the intention of the next contract. But I would like to know more details about those issues you've raised, because they do concern me.
I think Matt's articulated that really well in terms of the relationship and our work in terms of cultural, making sure that the team kind of represent the council's behaviours and values and such like. I suppose I'm a bit nervous about some of the, the officers are out there day after day. They do receive, I think, quite a lot of abuse from people. We have been concerned about verbal abuse and other abuse to them, and it's our, whether they're a contractor or a member of staff, we treat them exactly the same, and we look after their kind of well-being and protect them. So I guess I'm a little bit nervous, Jane, I suppose, in terms of how you've said that, and we will certainly pick up that issue, because the evidence is the complaints are very low compared to others, and indeed the complaints that we do have that are justified are extraordinarily low as well. So we think we've got a really good balance at the moment. Of course, there will be, as you said, Jane, at the start, there will be people who, are unthankful for this service, but we will endeavour to look after that team very, very carefully indeed.
I just think, like, engage, if you're walking across the car park, hello, instead of the chatting to each other, and if they're going to be public facing for the council, I think it's a great thing, and I think it can improve their perception doing those roles.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Mary Louise.
That's a lot to ask of a contracted employee. I mean, the thing about Hackney is that they bought it in-house. And part of the reason that they bought it in-house was the perception of that the way that the contracts were being managed by the contractor, there was this continual pressure on the parking enforcement officers to issue tickets and so on. And we're talking about Hackney, yeah? And this spilled over. And I think while it's laudable to talk about parking ambassadors and so on, it's like putting an awful, because those parking enforcement officers will be pressured by the requirements of the contract, which will be a profit-making contract, but will have to operate in its own way. Yeah. So I think there is an issue there to be considered. And the other thing is, I don't think that you can take lack of complaints as evidence of that everything is fine, because people that I know are too frightened to complain, or they find it too onerous. They don't know how the system works. They think they're going to get involved into a long legal protracted thing. So while I understand, your difficulty, I understand that you find it challenging to hear this, but I think you have to account for the fact that people who are highly dissatisfied are not complaining.
Pick up, I didn't mean to be so harsh when I said no. Just for clarity, parking enforcement isn't target driven. It is literally about making sure that enforcement is done through legislation.
I understand,
so
but
there are no targets.
They're talking about perception, that there is most certainly there is a perception among people, here that is how it's driven.
There is a need to address that. One of the things we're looking at, there's a new initiative called Behind the Uniform, which recognises that parking enforcement officers particularly suffer from that sort of abuse and that perception, and that we're trying to get behind the uniform and say to people that actually they're real people. Treat them with respect, and perhaps they will treat you with the same respect back. So there's an initiative there that we're working with our current contractor to see if we can start to sort of communicate that to our public more so. But it is a difficult one, because when you're in a uniform with a peak and your cap, and traditionally traffic wardens are not the nice people, it's a difficult thing to break that barrier. But we'd like to try and do that.
Yeah, it is. Is it not more difficult as part of an outsourced, when you're as a contractor, you're subject to the sort of, the insecurity of work and so on, as opposed to being sort of like a council employee? Well, we're not going to solve that tonight. No, so I think we should.
Adrian, I'm going to go to Adrian, Pauline, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, just want to make a couple of points. We're not a London borough, and the scale at which we're operating is significantly smaller. The complexity of the civil enforcement operation is significant, and I would be very, very concerned at a proposal to take this in-house in terms of the systems, in terms of the training, the standards, and everything that goes with it. So never say never, but the challenges of doing this on our scale are huge. I am slightly surprised at the comments made on some of our civil enforcement officers, and I'd like to extend an offer here, and I happily extend this to all other councillors, to come and spend some time with them. They work out of an office in Wokingham Town. come and spend a couple of hours walking around with them, talking to them, understanding what they do, I think you would change your view. So that's a genuine offer. If you'd like to do that, we can make that happen.
Thank you, Adrian. I've done it before with another place, and it is an eye-opening experience to see the work that they do. Pauline, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adrian. I wouldn't want to insource this either. I actually find them very responsive, and when we've had issues with school parking and things in early, and we need a little jiggle to the schedule of people coming around in order to deal with it, they're very, very responsive and they're very, very helpful. I also think it's not an easy job. A lot of people they don't like getting told to move on, and they don't like getting tickets, and they will sometimes, I'm not suggesting this is the case with your lady at all, but they will sometimes tell outrageous lies about what's actually gone on, which you only then find out later when you see the CCTV are just not true. So I'm not saying that your lady's making stuff up. There's always individuals that grind against each other, or pick somebody up on the wrong day, or just odd people that are not as responsive as they should be. But generally, I think they're pretty good, is my view.
Sorry, just to quickly jump in, just to add to that, Paul, I think you're right. We've worked with them and they've got body cameras on, and we've had just this. We've had residents make formal complaints, quite serious complaints, and actually we've gone and spoken to them. They use that body cam footage to kind of not only protect the resident, but protect themselves. And the accusation that was made would have been a complete sackable offence instantly, and we looked into it. It came from above. We came all the way through. We got hold of the CCTV footage. Absolute complete lies from the resident. And when we advised the resident we had the footage, they were pretty shocked, and obviously backed down and walked away kind of thing, because the evidence was there. And it is scary what people are prepared to say. The body camera footage has definitely been fantastic, and it protects them. It protects them, and obviously the resident. It's the truth.
I think that's a useful point, actually. So if you've got a complaint, let's see the CCTV and all the body cam footage, and let's see what actually happened. And then you can take the appropriate action, whether it's dealing with the enforcement officer or whether it's dealing with the resident.
Okay. Any other comments that we want to make on this? If not, we'll thank the officers for the presentation, for staying so late. We still have one major item to get through, and we have a guillotine fast approaching in 45 minutes. Especially on the topic we've got to get through. I'm sorry, Peter.
15 minutes.
Oh, sorry, no, 15 minutes to have the motion and then the extension till 11. If the committee agrees.
If the committee agrees.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
This was the item you could
Grace Farm.
have given to me. This was the item you could have given to me.
This is the item I wanted to give tomorrow, but officers didn't want it. Right. Okay, eyes down, full house, last item, Gray's Farm. Last big item. Couple items to go. George.
I think
We should have practiced this with all the time we've had.
given
It's
the
not
time,
like you haven't had plenty of chance.
given the time, I'm going to hand straight over to the team, I think, just to go through the presentation slides and then receive your questions. I won't delay this other than say thanks for the team for waiting so long.
Cool. I think, Mark, did you want to say something to just introduce?
Yeah, I will actually. Thank you very much. 10 years ago, we bought a strawberry farm, £2.5 million. It was a bargain. Angus Ross, would he have dreamt where this would go? So it's not what it is now, but it's where it could go. A jewel in our crown and a potential gold mine. I've set you up now.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, George. We weren't planning to go through the presentation. You've got it in the pack, just in terms of efficiency of time. We can do, but I think you can all read it, so that's fine. But I think what Mark said, what we wanted to do today was bring an update on where the project is in a public forum, so that both the committee and the public could see where we were. as Mark said, we bought this site 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, and now is the time to start bringing that forward. So the work that's happened to date has been looking one at kind of the built form feasibility, what could we get on the site, what could those facilities look like, both the outdoor sporting facilities but also the infrastructure that's required to support it. So the extent, scale of the pavilion, the parking that's required, etc., etc. The fundamental principles are still the same. This is a piece of infrastructure to support our current and expanding populations around outdoor sports. But what we have done through that work and through engagement is looked at those facilities and identified opportunities, I suppose, of where there could be a sort of a plus or a commercial element added to it. So whilst we're still providing those fundamental infrastructure, sporting facilities, are there other opportunities to make the best use of the site? And that's why there are two options in the paper and then probably a second plus option as we sort of look to say, well, actually, we could do this in terms of the sports facilities, but we could do something more. We've had conversations with potential partners, and Gemma can touch on that a bit. And that's why the sort of second option is a bigger pavilion, more hireable spaces, more commercial options to support that. I'll just remind the committee that we do need to make sure that we are getting best value out of the assets that we have. So you will see that the plan doesn't fill the entire site, and that's where that kind of commercial opportunity maybe comes in a later phase where we could expand. Otherwise, we will have bits of this site that we're not utilising very, very well and not achieving that best value part. So that's kind of where we are. There are some questions in the report that we sort of asked to maybe prompt conversation from the committee, so that would be good to cover those. I don't know, Jim, if you just want to touch on the funding side, and bearing in mind we've just spent 3 hours talking about the budget, so we should probably...
Yeah, so you'll see in the pack that there's currently two options identified. One, as Sarah touched on, is the kind of traditional football-based sports hub, and there's numbers associated with that. And the second one is a kind of current commercial sports hub model, and you'll see the numbers in there. There's quite a significant profit opportunity for us if we make this a commercial sports hub. We do have some funding around Section 106, and this kind of the next stage of this is to kind of really get into the weeds of what funding we have available, review when that is available and exactly what that can be used for. What I would like to say is the kind of phase 2 that we're looking at is bringing a partner on board, really developing the site so that we're getting that best value for money, but we're also expanding the sports opportunities for our community. So looking at things like potentially something like indoor cricket, paddle tennis, an outdoor adventure kind of climbing wall, potentially something along those lines. So this is kind of, we're bringing, I guess, phase 1 to the table now with some questions and thoughts. And we would then like to explore a phase 2 of the wider commercial opportunity. So, yeah, just that's my take.
So, thank you. I have to declare a slight interest as this is in my ward. I'm really grateful or glad to see actually we're finally seeing this tonight. It's been delayed a few times, and I hope that we can give it justice, given the lateness of the hour, to justify the work and the fact that you've been sitting here for a few hours as well. I think it's good to see this. My view has always been we should be looking at the full commercial potential of the site. I think if we need to do it right, with the right value for money, the right returns, and the right kind of best value for the asset that we've got, the facilities that it can generate in its location, its proximity and connectivity to the new SWDR, as opposed to routing it via back roads. I have a number of concerns, being dreadfully parochial, that where it's placed, you know, we said when we looked at this last week about the transport review and public transport and everything else, there is no safe road access for pedestrians from the bottom half of Woking and without to this site. So there's no footpaths easily. So there is rough tracks, but what I'd like to see is how do we, as we're looking at other policies, how do we bring in that footpath access from Woking and without, etc. So that's one. I can pause.
Shall I go for that one first? So I thought you were going to ask no access, safe foot access from the north, but you're actually asking for the south, aren't you? From
yes.
So I think there are some plans as we develop the South Woking extension to develop links to Grace Fruit Farms through that side.
Yeah,
hopefully that will serve that bit of...
but that doesn't address all of the residents in 9 Mile Ride, for example. It only addresses the benefit of the residents along the new extensions south of the railway line. So there's still a huge community. There's no footpath down Heathlands. There's no footpath down Honey Hill, both of which are fast roads. So I think just when we're looking at the plan, so how we have the connectivity to the south and public transport links and everything else, otherwise we have the risk of developing a site that can only be accessed by car from the north.
Yeah, from the north, it will be accessed from a sustainable transport link from the new South Wokingham development. So there'll be full sustainable transport link in the north, and then a car park in the south. I agree that it's challenging to put in footways on some of those roads that are really quite narrow and tree lined.
Yeah.
So
and it's just a general call out that this is the point that comes up again and again. We want people to use sustainable methods of transport to get there. Yet if you're in the south, you can't. If you're in the north, we're designing all sorts of things, but the area that lots of people sit within the south can't access. So there's that. A couple other points for me. There are a lot of people in cricket, and I know there's other clubs that would be willing and happy to talk about use of that because they've run out of space in their own local places. They've run out of place within Bracknell Forest where they're renting other facilities from other clubs. I know in the past there's been conversations between Bracknell, Wellington, Wokingham, and I think at one point we ended up with 3 possible proposals for running tracks. Wellington had a running track and small stadium plan. Bracknell Forest has a very out-of-date running track that prevents them from redeveloping the sports centre. Is that something that can be looked at as well from a commercialisation perspective? Because there's significant funding from varying different funds. Literally get rid of the sports centre, work with Wellington, and now you've got a facility. Rather than building 2 or 3, just build one and build it right. And there's other things around about the use of rugby as well. This to me looked very football focused, which is a concern for me and a lot of residents that it's not. If we're building something, it shouldn't just be football. The climbing wall, I really like the idea, but if you stand on the roof of Oakwood or on one of the many climbing walls or Jacob's ladders at Oakwood, you see this new site. So we have a great centre there. But for me, from my perspective, it's great to see this. I'd like to see the full commercialisation, so it's kind of 2A, 2B, 2C, whatever the next bit is, because this should be almost a self-funding, investor-save type scheme that will generate significant income potential. So I'd like to see that developed. I'm not necessarily sure about things like the soft play area, but the principles of having a large space that we can then figure out what the design looks like as part of the refinement of this before it gets to final stage. I think for me it is that option 2, option 3, but full commercialisation. Anyway, that's me being directly parochial. Any other questions?
Shall I just come back on?
Yes.
I think the key of the building that we've put in front of you in kind of option 2 at the moment is to have that flexible space. So we've done a lot of research around kind of what people want. If people are bringing children to use the football pitches, they want to have other access. So absolutely, you'll see that there's some flexibility there. But I think where we're at with this is that's not necessarily where we'll land, because we are looking at what we can do with the wider centres. Just to touch on running tracks, they actually lose a lot of money. So that wasn't something we were planning to go down the route of. I will go back and look at it, but that's the kind of research has shown us that, and that's why a lot of them are in disrepair, because they cost so much to maintain. But we have built in at the moment that kind of outside running track. So there is some kind of use of a track stroke walking cycling space. But yeah, I take on board your point and we'll look at it.
I wasn't directly saying that we should. I'm just saying that you've got 3 different areas looking at running tracks. Well, certainly 2 different areas looking at running tracks. It makes more sense to have a more joined up, multi-boundary, multi-area. If you've got 3 different people, why would you need 3 when 3 lose money, whereas 1 might make money? It's just want to make sure we're not going to triplicate facilities we don't need.
And I think that's why it's important to find the right partner for us to look at the full commercialisation of the site, is to ensure that we've got partners that can work with others. So,
Pauline, I think your hand was up next.
was a question about the business case, actually, but just to chuck in an idea of indoor cricket has been getting quite a lot of... just another alternative. I think there's an awful lot of football and there isn't a lot of anything else. So it was option 2, the commercial sports hub even. You say the profit years 1 to 5. When is year 1? Presumably it's not 2028, is it? Because you've got to pay the cost of the capital.
Yeah, it's year 28, 29.
So you're going to make enough money out of it to make a profit of 530k, presumably, in year 28, 29?
Yeah.
Even including the cost of the capital all the way through?
Yeah.
Wow.
We have some, as I mentioned, we have some 106 funding. So we are not planning to use capital for the full amount. There will be Section 106 to contribute to that.
And that's for the £24 million one?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Good, okay.
Just before we go on, it's just about 10:30. If we want to continue, can I have a show of hands to continue until 11 o'clock?
Well, not till 11. No.
Well, but the maximum we can go on is for another half an hour. That could be longer. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I liked the fact that it's profitable, and I think if that works, then great. And option 2 seems a really good idea. But it'd be interesting to see more detail behind the assumptions that you've made based around where that profit's going to come from, and what partnerships you foresee that would deliver that level of profit. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to kind of give some indications of where we are at the moment, obviously the profit comes from the opportunities around the flexible spaces inside. So there's event spaces, there's cafe spaces, as well as soft play and gym. We know that there's a demand in the borough for those, and we know that they're generally profitable. So they've been built in. We've done a lot of research out in the market. We've been to see a number of sports hubs. So we've built the numbers robustly around that for this particular option. As I say, we're still having those meetings and understanding what that wider partnership and the bigger commercial plan can look like, and that will obviously then generate another business plan with more numbers that hopefully are even more profitable.
I think I'm carrying on from your question. In your proposed delivery programme, you've got it going to the executive to look at to approve the preferred option. So the feasibility study, it won't come back to us before it goes to the executive for a decision?
I would suggest that's probably, if you'd like to see it and request it, then we'd be happy to bring it back. And I would suggest that's probably a good thing.
Yes,
I think
thank
it's
you.
fairly
Can
safe.
I then request that we have it before it goes to the exec? Thank you.
Yeah, we were going to suggest that at the end. The other thing, just while I'm on here, I just wanted to say that we're going to consider Cantley sort of in the round, so it's sort of not north versus south, it's north and south. As an example, we got an ageing hockey pitch at Cantley, so, is there a swap there, the indoor cricket? Football, I'm a football man, and, we're not going to have so much football at Grays Farm, so perhaps Cantley can do that. Yeah.
I think if I can, just building on that, Mark, I think it's that kind of making sure that we have that network of facilities for the right sports in the right places, and they're all complementary and they're not competing. And I had a very, very brief conversation with the clerk at Wokingham Without Parish Council, and we just thought this was coming, and they're a partner that we definitely want to work with going forward on this. And just thinking, at Pinewood there are sports there that's only a mile or so away from Grace Farm, so making sure that everything we're putting in is not competing with each other, but they are complementary. And if it's it's football at Grace Farm, then maybe it's not football somewhere else. And I think that's really important, and that'd be an important bit for the commerciality as well, that we haven't got too much choice of where people can go.
And I think that's, I was going to come on to a request, I think, for how we engage the parish, and then being slightly parochial again, but the ward councillors for Wokingham Without, because it is a major facility going in our area with Wokingham Without, with Pinewood, with everything else that's going on. I think I've got particular, not concerns about Pinewood vis-a-vis this, but there are facilities at Pinewood. There's a plan for what Pinewood want to try and do. There are gym facilities and sports facilities. There's a football club. There's lots of other things that actually bigger conversations, you know, if you, I think to Mark's point, but if you start looking at things in the round, you know, we're creating something that's potentially, you know, sub-regionally significant compared to other areas. Actually, we have a chance to really make something amazing, which isn't just one place. It's a joined up network and a joined up facility. So I think with Cantley, with this, with Pinewood, with Oakwood, with, you know, there are lots of options here and we just need to get it right. So I think how we bring Wokingham without parish and work with the borough councillors together, I think is an important next step as well.
Yeah. Do you have any particular requests or suggestions of how we do that? I think it's really important, but...
Take it up offline with you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Coming in there, I've visited most of the sports organisations at Pinewood, and the gymnastics, you know, is unbelievable. And they, you know, they don't want to move, but they would move for world-beating facilities, as an example.
And that's why this whole conversation needs to be in the round, because this is more than just the Grays Farm piece. This is, you know, it has wider significance across a wider geographic area and a different sporting area. One other question, sorry, and I'll go back to Mary-Louise. So where does this leave Grays Farm for next year? Do they operate next year? Does it does it shut down? Is it gone? Are they getting another season?
I think the discussions we've had is that we will grant a further lease to the operator until October next year, so it should allow them to go through a full season. And give them a bit of time at the end, I think, to pack up and stuff and things like that. So.
No, that's great news, and it gives some reassurance as well. Okay, thank you.
You just wanted to know where you get strawberries from,
Pretty
didn't
much.
you? That was it.
Well, you know, pick your own strawberries. The rhubarb's really good. Potatoes are good. Soft fruit. It's a great place. Mary-Louise and then Dave.
Absolutely. No, a lot of my childhood was spent picking at Grace Farm, so I'm really pleased there's one more season to do it. With relate to in Cantley, you know, the role of like the clubs and the local sports organisations is enormously important, and not just the sports. Having met the Bowmen once, you never forget them in any form. Now, they told me that there was like quite a clear agreement around increases in pitch fees and so on that was necessary for them to feel secure, you know, in planning. And I wondered when this sort of, I understand this emphasis on commercialisation, which I don't disagree with. I mean, is that going to come into conflict with some of the expectations of local clubs who've, you know, been used to kind of a longer term, less commercial, less exploitative or extractive relationship?
So I think it's when we talk about a commercial option, one of the truisms about commercial options with 3G pitches, for instance, which is the main facility here, is the commercial opportunities actually providing for the clubs. I say to people, there aren't loads of 50-year-old blokes running around playing five-a-side every night, enough to fill all the 3G pitches with. It's actually providing those training opportunities to local clubs. And, you know, that price point will be fixed so it's affordable to those clubs. And I don't imagine it'll be, our assumptions really go away from anything we're doing now, really.
No, our assumptions are to align it to our other pitches in the borough, which are governed and managed through kind of national guidelines around what we charge. So we've, as Andy mentioned, it's all about occupancy and us having kind of great facilities, and potentially we'll have shock pads for things like rugby as well. That gives us the flexibility, and the commercial money is made by having it full 80% of the time rather than the fees.
And you have a portfolio basically of businesses, so the Bowman of Burley will always be there. Because you've got to do that, and it's building the community's wealth, but it needs to be led, unfortunately or fortunately, by commercialisation. It has to be.
I think it's a really good opportunity, as I said. Also, definitely think about, not just think about the sports that are popular now. Sports are evolving, and try and think 5, 10 years in the future. I know that's more challenging, but things like, I think you mentioned paddle, I know that's grown significantly and its growth trajectory is really strong, and looking for those opportunities, I think if we can get it right the first time, it's far better.
Yeah, just to say, completely agree, and I think that's one of the things with the partner is giving us the opportunity and the industry knowledge to understand what those trends might be. As you say, paddle is one of them. One of the other ones we've heard about is indoor street cricket, so a smaller space that's much more flexible that kids can kind of come into. So absolutely, we're going to take that on board with what the future might look like.
Anything else? I feel like we should apologise that this has been squeezed in at the end, or this you know, this no squeezed in. Sorry, no, not squeezed in. The fact that we've sat through all of this long meeting and we've got through this massively important topic. Please don't think that this is of anything less important. This is. I mean, we've talked about all of the revenue and capital and all the other pressures over the budget. This for us is a huge development, and this is a hugely important significance for everyone. So grateful for all the work, glad to see it here, looking forward to the next steps, and we can discuss offline the Woking Without Parish and the borough councillors as well. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Right. 2 items left. Forward work programme. Any questions on the next couple of meetings? The next meeting obviously is end of November, 25th of November, which is the Adult Social Care and Children's Services. If not, we will move. You'll notice that one of the items that was next week has now been, sorry, the next meeting, which was planning services, has now been deferred, and the emergency, you'll see there's some things moved around. If not that, anything on the action tracker? Sorry, Pauline, whereabouts?
The 21st of January, 26 looks a bit heavy.
I would imagine, looking at some of the other things, that some things might change or move.
Yeah, you could think that a few of those things are a bit flexible about when they come. Like the update on emergency planning doesn't sound like it has to be done.
No, I think that's, there's a couple, the guiding principle where we've got some of these where we've still got MTFB stuff to do, and the rest is where can things shift, where can things move, especially if it's update to as opposed to substantive policy.
Precisely.
Just if we're all agreed on that, then we'll do it. Some items like the adaptive street lighting has already been delayed, deferred a couple of times as well. So I think there's a few things that we can probably look at with over the next couple of weeks. Dave.
Mark, when these are put together, does someone actually go through and have a sort of broad idea of how much time they think is going to take for various agenda items, and sort of, because then you can sort of work out, is this too big an agenda or is it too small? Because well, it'd be nice to think that some thought was going into that.
I'm going to defer sideways to George, because there was 1 or 2 items on the agenda that we did perhaps suggest needed to maybe move, George.
Sometimes, yeah, it's very difficult to predict where you collectively might go. So, but yes, there is a thought process as to how much time you might need on something. What also happens is there's issues that then come onto the agenda that are on the way to executive, and we can't delay those. So some of those reports this evening, for example. So apologies for putting a lot of pressure on you this evening, but very grateful for your time and input.
Right. Thank you, George, for spending the entire evening with us. Thank you, everyone, for your input tonight. And see you all in a couple of weeks.
I'm seeing you tomorrow.
I'm seeing you tomorrow, yeah. Meeting closed.